Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
The small cafe in the center of town was quite crowded at that hour. Molly and Cindy struggled to find 2 free seats in a remote corner and ordered a set lunch. Cindy winked and to her friend, "Can you start? There's no time to waste, spill it out." "What's the trouble you're in?" Molly looked apprehensively at the man who sat next to her and inspiredly sipped his soup. Her glance was interpreted by him as a desire to talk, and he remarked cheerfully, "My job is stressful, and I always have a voracious appetite when I'm stressed. But the soup here is good. It neutralizes any stress." As if in confirmation of these words, the man once again began to bend the seated one with relish. On the contrary, Cindy jumped with laughter in the palm of her hand. She looked meaningfully at her friend and sighed, in a unique language that the friends had used since their school days. This meant that the conversation would have to be postponed until the soup lover had finished his meal. In the meantime, the man quickly finished the first course and started the salad. His proximity was beginning to weigh on Molly, and she thought hopefully that the eating would not be accompanied by unpleasant sounds. But she realized she'd made a mistake in her predictions when her neighbor pulled up a plate of fresh coleslaw. Now there was more crunch added to the tea. The situation clearly amused Cindy, and Molly looked at her belittlingly, but she waved her hands. "Mole, bear with it, friend. There are no vacant seats in this place." Indeed, all the tables were occupied, and as soon as a seat was vacated, it was immediately occupied by someone else. Cindy, after a brief pause, cast another fleeting glance in Molly's direction. "Relax. They're bringing our order now." The young waitress cleared the trays with a magician's dexterity and wished them a pleasant appetite. The neighbor had finished his lunch and was finishing his compote. "Let's put the glass aside." He reluctantly got up from the table. "Thank you for the pleasant company, but the trumpet is calling me." Cindy gave him a long look, and Molly said cheerfully, "We seem to be alone. Use the moment to say what your emergency is." But no sooner had Molly opened her mouth than the seat vacated next to her was taken by another votive visitor. The elderly man tactfully asked, "I'm not shy of you." The woman smiled strainedly. "No, not at all. Enjoy your meal." The man cheerfully answered, "You too. The soup here is extraordinary. That's why I'm a longtime fan of this place." Molly thought with annoyance another soup lover. This cafe must be a gathering place for fans of this dish. Cindy could hardly contain herself from laughing. There were worms dancing in her eyes. She whispered quietly to Molly, "Not all is lost. Eat in peace. We'll talk afterward." Molly had an urgent matter to attend to, or rather, a delicate request for her friend. And when she asked Cindy to meet, she hadn't planned to spend money or time on lunch. But the friend stated, "Molly, no offense, but my time is split second by second. That's why I'm trying to make the best of it. I suggest we discuss your problem on our lunch hour. Let's meet later." Since Molly acted as a petitioner, she had to agree to her friend's terms. She came to the cafe, which had a positive reputation in the office environment of the city, and waited for her friend. Cindy appeared just a couple of minutes later, but the hall of the institution was already completely full. It remained only to submit to circumstances, what the women did by mutual consent. When they left the cafe, Cindy looked defiantly at her watch. "We still have about 10 minutes left. You can make your wishes known in that time." Her friend looked down at her a little, and arrogance was clearly evident in her tone. Molly realized that a friendly conversation was not going to work. She was ready to abandon her intention to ask her friend for help. But Cindy knew her too well. She gave Molly a friendly hug. "Don't take offense at the way things are turning out. But you have to keep yourself up all the time to stay afloat. You wouldn't believe it, but because of the wild workload, Andrew and I don't have time to exchange a word, let alone more personal matters. We're a mess with this one." Molly realized that Cindy was going to start telling her about her misfortunes and run out of time. She unceremoniously interrupted her friend. "Cindy, I'm sorry, but you said yourself that you don't have much time. I understand how hard it is for you to not be intimate with your husband. But I hope you're listening to me." Apparently, her friend hadn't expected such an abrupt turn of events. The smile slipped from her well-groomed face. "Madam," and she threw it down unhappily. "Well, I'm listening to you." And Molly intuitively felt that she was about to receive a rejection, but it was too late to back out. "Cindy, you probably know that William in the hospital." On the face of the interlocutor instantly appeared, suffering shock expression. "Oh yes, that's all my clientele talks about. After all, your husband is a famous man in our town. He's taught so many young people. I sincerely sympathize with you, and I'm ready to help as much as I can." Molly interrupted. "That's what I hope. You see, William and I have all our money in circulation. I mean, before he got sick, he invested it in some promising project. And now he's in need of a pretty hefty sum for treatment. But as far as I know, the doctor's prognosis is not good." Cindy hugged her friend again. "Molly, I understand your desire to help your husband. But is it worth throwing money away?" The blasphemous words of her friend caused Molly a second shock. She looked at Cindy in amazement and couldn't believe that she could compare the cost of treating a man to an unjustified sacrifice. "Cindy, how can you say that? What if, God forbid, an accident happens to your Andrew?" "Molly, I'm asking you not to be so hard on the psyche. You can't know what you're going to do in any given situation. That's why it's better not to fill your head with bad thoughts." Feeling that Cindy is about to jump beautifully to another topic again, Molly asked, "Don't avoid answering, Cindy. Tell me straight out, will you give me money?" The owner of the small store she had bought not without their help. He glared angrily. "No, I won't. I don't allocate funds for a hopeless case. There's no guarantee that the treatment will help William. I don't want my money to be used by fraudsters. No offense, but I don't believe in unproven treatments, no matter how much they advertise them on TV." Molly felt like her whole world was crumbling before her eyes. She mumbled a little. "Cindy, there's no need for explanations. I've got it all figured out." Molly turned abruptly and headed for the bus stop. Cindy shouted after her, "Molly, why did you run right away? Let's think about what we can do together." Molly turned around. "Are you late for work? 10 minutes is already over." Cindy threw angrily in the background. "You need money. So sell your car or your apartment. It's as simple as that. Or do you feel sorry for your own good?" Tears ran down her cheeks and bitter resentment overflowed her heart. Molly did not expect that her best friend, with whom they had gone through fire and water together, would refuse her. She thought with despair how quickly you forgot all the good things William and I had done for you. You used to be a nobody with no name. And now she's acting all tough. You're an ungrateful pig after that. Molly said all this to her friend, mentally hoping for some temporary relief. But it became even more bitter, and she cried again. Who else to fall at her feet? The woman began to mentally go through her friends and acquaintances. But after the first failure, her resolve faded. She tried to calm herself down. She needed to cool down and think things over. If Cindy had said no so flatly, others might do the same. Something inside her ached and resented her friend again. But the eye beckoned. I never thought I'd gotten a blow from my best friend. A man passing by looked at her in surprise, and Molly realized she had spoken her thoughts about her friend out loud. To calm down, the woman closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths. This technique was taught to her by her daughter Nancy. As a child, she was interested in theater arts and later enrolled in the University of Culture. She claimed that breathing exercises helped to put her daughter's nerves in order. The method helped to calm her down a bit. Molly boarded a bus that was headed to the regional hospital, where her husband was currently undergoing treatment. But as the woman did not try to tune into the positive wave, the unpleasant conversation with Cindy wouldn't get out of her head. For as long as Molly could remember, Cindy had always been there for her. Their mothers had worked in a candy store for many years. The women were good friends, and their daughters went to the same day care center. Cindy immediately took on the role of leader, which delighted her mom. That's right, daughter. Let everyone know who they're dealing with. Sometimes it's good to be cheeky if it helps the cause. Molly's mom disagreed with her friend. Will your Cindy bossy attitude get you in trouble someday? Kids don't like upstarts like that, and they can get them in trouble. Well, Lena and her mother liked her daughter's activity, and she even encouraged her daughter's desire to elbow her way in. And chutzpah she considered one of the best qualities. Without chutzpah, you can't get anywhere today. If aunts and math, you can't get anywhere in life. But the woman's mom, as in water, her prediction came true. When the girls were in the 5th grade, they noticed that Cindy Grain of Sand is always running to the teacher's room. So they decided to teach her a lesson for snitching. Only one Molly decided to stand up for her friend, but she received a portion of slaps from her classmates. After this educational action, Cindy a little tempered his ardor, but soon everything returned to the former course. However, the classmates no longer engaged in violence, but began to ignore Cindy completely. Molly, too, fell under the press of contempt, and so it went on until graduation. And then the paths of friends diverged. Molly went to college. Cindy, with her diploma, had to go to college. Their friendship was rekindled after Molly's wedding, or rather, during the preparations for the event. Shortly before the party, Cindy called out of the blue, "Can I congratulate you? I heard that you are getting married?" Molly did not expect this call, so from confusion answered uncertainly, "Yes, I'm getting married soon, and I don't have a minute to spare." "I see, what do you need a friend for now?" It was said in such a tone that Molly felt ashamed for some reason. She tried to justify herself. "Cindy, I lost track of you. You stopped calling me. You could have checked with my mother." "I'm sorry, it didn't occur to me." Cindy laughed in her inimitable way. "I'll only forgive you if I'm your maid of honor." Although Molly had already chosen a fellow student as her maid of honor, she gave in to Cindy. However, she didn't regret it once, because her friend did an excellent job. True, even during the celebration, Cindy as if casually hinted that she had problems with employment, slyly squinting into her eyes. She said, "If you get a job, we'll be even. You know, like it'll be payment for my services." William didn't like Cindy's snoring then. "Yeah, well, your girlfriend is, let's face it, not the shy type. To be honest, I didn't expect her to give us such a deal just for going to our wedding." Molly was ashamed of her friend, but she didn't want to say no. And she looked at her husband William with a belittling look. "Not everyone is up to your standards. But Olya and I have been friends for so many years. You don't have to go on. I'll try to do what I can for your girlfriend." Molly's husband helped Olya get a job in the college cafeteria, but the girl worked for only 6 months, after which she resolutely declared, "No, that's not a job for me. It's not really my thing. I would have agreed to wash dishes as an apprenticeship master. Let him look for other fools." Molly remembers William's surprise at the time. He tried to tell her friend that to be a foreman you had to have the right education. The man even advised her, "Cindy, enroll as a part-time student, and then things will be easier to solve." But that's a suggestion. She's a willful girl. I'm not going to mess around. I'm a man without an institution. Are you going to be jealous of me? For almost 5 years, she stayed out of sight. Once Molly decided to visit her friend's mother, but from the neighbors learned that she sold the apartment and left. So the left-handed woman shared her suspicions with her. "I can't say for sure, but I think Cindy's in the middle of another story." The apartment was sold in a hurry. The news had Molly worried sick. After all, the fate of her friend was not indifferent to her. Since Cindy did not answer the phone, Molly began to look for her. She remembered how once her friend told her about some relatives in the village and went there. What she saw in that remote place shocked her. Cindy and her mother were huddled in some chicky barn, and her friend looked like a frightened animal. She was genuinely excited at her arrival and cried for a long time on Molly's shoulder. "Molly, thank you for not forgetting. I thought you and I would never meet again. You know, I'm being hunted. That's why I can't show my face in town. I could get killed." Molly started shaking her friend. "Tell me what you've done again." When the crime of remorse passed, she told me how she decided to become a businesswoman. There was no money, so the young adventuress borrowed a small sum from a man with whom she had an affair at the time. But love quickly ended, and the beau began to demand the return of the debt. She had to sell her car, apartment, and atelier. He took it too. He gave it to me first and then took it away. Molly was shocked by the encounter and told her husband everything. Even though they already had 2 children at the time, William sighed and said friends need help. I'll think of something to save your girlfriend. Molly doesn't know to this day what measures William took at that time. But soon Cindy reported that her ex-boyfriend had unhooked everything from her. Molly, you're not gonna believe this. He gave me a little extra money. Said he miscalculated the interest. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough to put me in a good business. Molly asked Yulia, maybe we shouldn't go down the same road. The friend in her peculiar manner replied, Volkov, fear not to go into the forest. I'll be more discreet this time. Cindy rented a small room and turned the space into an atelier for minor clothing repair. Surprisingly, this direction turned out to be profitable and brought, albeit small, but stable income. 2 years later, Cindy decided to buy a small store, but she again lacked money. The couple gave her the necessary amount without reservations, and William showed the breadth of his noble soul. Will you give it to me when you get a chance? You can take your time. And Cindy took her time. For almost 10 years, she had been paying back her debt drop by drop, and each time during the procedure of handing over the money, she regretfully said that it was so easy to borrow, so hard to pay back. It is a pity that it is impossible to cancel the debt because of the statute of limitations. As in criminal practice, such applications had always embarrassed Molly, but she had tactfully kept silent. Only now she had experienced firsthand what good things are worth. Even family and friends are not always paid back in the same coin. Molly had heard many times the common expression that trouble comes when you don't expect it. For a long time, this phrase for her represented a set of words, its meaning. She first realized it when her father had a stroke. That Sunday afternoon changed the rest of her life. Summer was counting her last days, and they went to the farm as a family to harvest the crops and prepare to build a new house. The plot was allotted to her father for his merits in labor, and her parents treasured these poor bulletins as if their lives depended on this piece of land. Starting in the spring, they spent all their free time on their farm. The work was finished in the fall. Although a wooden structure of 10 square meters with an area of 10 square meters with a stretch fit this definition of a house. Her mother and father were very proud of the property, and Molly laughed at their affection. The wind would blow it away one day. Leo had a healthy sense of humor and did not take offense to his daughter's criticism that our farm was undersized. It's no big deal. Here I will go on a well-deserved vacation and grow a cottage in 2 floors. Mother also dreamed of turning the crooked, perky barn into something decent, so that it would not be ashamed in front of the neighbors. But she did not want to wait until her husband retired. So at the height of the farming season, she's always itching for Leo. Look at the beauty people have turned their plots into. Our house is a doghouse. It'll do for the season. You're not going to move here, are you? Anything's possible. If we get water, heat, we could live here in the winter. Maybe Molly will get married and move to the farm. For a long time, the man fought off his wife's attacks, but one day he couldn't take it anymore. What is it with you women and your brainwashing? Do you know how much it will cost us for your house with amenities? Nina with a smile answered the surprise not to be pampered. Not the last piece of bread we finish eating. I'm not asking you to start building right now. We can gradually move towards the goal. First buy materials, then bring water. Leo reluctantly accepted his wife's plan. They couldn't wait to start building. That Sunday afternoon they were to bring blocks, so the mother hurried her daughter and husband. Or else people will come, and the owners are not there. The work schedule is like this. My father and I will carry the blocks. And you, my daughter, will take care of the towns and I will get married. I have not been attracted to farming since childhood. And she didn't take her mother's call with optimism. Mom, let's switch places. You'll go to the garden and I'll help Daddy. This division of labor was fine with everyone. When they arrived at the place, Molly went to the neighbors and asked them for a wheelbarrow. The case immediately went. Molly threatened the vehicle, and her father took the apples to the barn. The work was already coming to an end when Leo suddenly fell down near the loaded wheelbarrow. Molly thought at first that he had just tripped and rushed over to him. Dad, why are you being so sloppy? But her father didn't answer. He was lying there unmoving, with his eyes wide open, only his lips moved. But it was impossible to make out the words. Only the daughter could be heard clearly. Call your mom. It took 40 minutes for the ambulance to reach the village. By that time, Leo had already lost consciousness. As it later turned out, the man's condition worsened because the women tried to drag him into the house. The ambulance paramedic was very rude about it. Why are you bothering him? Don't you know that you can't move a person in such situations? Nina was still in a state of shock and responded inappropriately. How would we know? We're not doctors. He fell, and that's it. We couldn't leave him lying on the cold ground. The mother wept bitterly. Molly said bitterly to the medic, "You could have come earlier." They wanted to get into the car to accompany the father to the hospital. But apparently the paramedic took offense and slammed the door of the loaf in their faces. We're not a cab to take everyone around on demand. Only late in the evening, mother and daughter hitchhiked to the city and went straight to the hospital. There they learned that the father was in critical condition. The doctor sadly said if you had immediately taken the patient to the hospital, the prognosis would be more favorable. And now we can only hope for a miracle. Of course, the miracle did not happen, but that time the doctors still managed to snatch Leo from the clutches of death. But after the stroke, he remained an invalid, deprived of the ability to serve himself independently. Nina was no longer interested in the plot and the house. She made a lot of efforts to make life easier. His wife Molly was already studying at the institute at that time, but she always came home on weekends. It was only after 6 months that Leo slowly began to recover. His speech returned. He began to move around a little on his own and even made jokes. Nina rejoiced at his progress. "Molly, it seems to have passed. Trouble is upon us. And your father is already smiling around the house with a stick, helping me. God willing, he'll be running soon." But the heavens did not hear the pleas of the woman who could not imagine life without her beloved husband. 2 years later, there was a second stroke, after which Leo did not recover. After the death of her husband, Nina became withdrawn. She did not leave the apartment for weeks and lost all interest in the cottage garden. Molly used different ways to get her mother out of the state. But all her attempts failed. Even the grandchildren could not bring the woman back to life. Nina could sit for hours without moving, staring at the picture of her husband. Molly watched her mother and thought God forbid to experience such grief. But the young woman did not know what a heavy test prepared for her fate. Nina outlived her husband by 8 years. She went into the next world, quietly, in her sleep. The doctors diagnosed her with heart failure. And it really surprised Molly because Mom never complained about her heart. They didn't even have Valadol in their home medicine cabinet. It was the second blow from which Molly could not recover for several years during this difficult period, helped her to persevere. Husband William took over some of the household responsibilities. He took care of the children and organized healthy recreation on weekends. The old ladies on the bench at the driveway were always discussing their family. Such a positive man, William, today, it is rare to meet a man of such kindness. He is a reliable support in his family and helps other people's children to get out into the world. The second elderly lady completed the list of merits of her neighbor. An acquaintance of mine who works at the college told me that William is very well respected at the college, and parents often turn to him when their kids get discouraged. There was not an ounce of exaggeration in these admiring comments. William truly valued family above all else, and his work came second. But he treated other people's children the same way he treated his own. If any of his relatives or acquaintances commented on the matter, he would say, "There are no other people's children, and I am happy that the state entrusted me to bring up the young generation. After all, they are our future." Although this statement sounded pompous, the teacher spoke sincerely. He believed in his mission. Of course, William treated his own children more reverently. When Thomas and Nancy were small, he did not consider it a shame to change slogans or cook porridge for the children. Nancy was especially attached to her father. In early childhood, she called him mother. At first, the couple thought that the girl just confused in the words, but Nancy was ahead of her peers in development. And when Molly told her daughter that there is a mom and dad, the girl with enviable stubbornness began to prove. "There are mommy, our daddy, better than you cooks porridge. He takes me to daycare and reads me fairy tales." Therefore, he is a mom. Molly understood the reason for the new term and laughed for a long time. In the evening, she told her husband about her little daughter's reasoning. And William even wept from the feelings overflowing his manly heart. He brought the girl to his powerful chest and kissed her. "Thank you, Nancy. I think that's a very apt nickname for a super daddy." If his daughter could make ropes out of him, the elder Belsky's relationship with his son was purely masculine. His father fostered a sense of responsibility in Thomas from the time he was a baby. He often repeated when the boy was going to develop, "Tema, real man never cries. If you shed tears, guys will despise you and girls will not be friends with you." This warning worked without fail, and Thomas tried to be like his father in every way. But in addition to the best human qualities, William tried from an early age to instill in his son a love of sports. In the past, he himself seriously engaged in weightlifting and tried to keep his body in good physical shape, although Molly was not a fan of sports activities. But she did not want to lag behind her husband and children. And in the winter, they often went skiing with the whole family out of town, where there was a campground with all the necessary infrastructure. Such trips to nature not only strengthened immunity, but gave a lot of colorful emotions. When Nancy grew up a little, she began to take a camera with her. "I will make a chronicle of our glorious family." And without photos, it is difficult to create something substantial. Nancy's ideas later caught on with the rest of the family, which contributed to the creation of a rich archive. Molly's greatest fear was that her universal happiness would be suddenly cut short. This fear became more palpable in later years. At times, the woman felt like an invisible counter working inside her, and this device increasingly signaled that the time of her happiness was inexorably coming to an end. This feeling of incomprehensible doom constrained her at night. But in the morning, she forgot it, thinking her fears unfounded. One day on her lunch break, she had an intimate conversation with a coworker. "Alex, do you ever feel like you're waiting for something bad to happen?" Wendy pulled her eyes out perplexed. "No, I don't. I'm an optimist in life. I only think positive thoughts." "You would go to a psychologist, consulted. Perhaps you have problems against the background of work or family workload." "What kind of trouble?" "No, Wendy. My family is nice and calm, but it's that calmness that worries me." The friend thought for a minute, then said sternly, "Put away the bad thoughts. Try to switch your mind." "I have a friend. She is a psychologist. By the way, I could arrange with her to take you in." So she advised me that in such moments, when the light is not nice, you should switch to something positive, like asking me to go back to the store and buy a bunch of unnecessary junk. Molly smiled. "I'm not used to wasting money." "Then take a vacation, change the scenery." Molly liked the second option better, and she even wanted to discuss it with her husband, but she didn't have time. William that evening returned from work tired and went straight to the bedroom. Molly paid no attention to this and continued to fuss in the kitchen. She made dinner, set the table. Only after that she decided to check what her husband was doing. William was asleep, so she started to stir him up. "You shouldn't sleep at this hour. What are you going to do at night?" The man struggled to open his eyes. "Molly, I don't feel well. My whole body's aching. It's hard to breathe. I better lie down for a while." The woman exclaimed. "I did my best to cook dinner." William did not want to offend his wife and, overcoming weakness, got out of bed. He dined without appetite. I didn't see that the process gave him agony. "William, don't push yourself. Eating through force. Have some tea and go to rest." She felt sorry for her husband, and in a burst of sincere feelings, she kissed him on the forehead and immediately recoiled. "That's what you're burning up. Do you need to take your temperature?" The man smiled strainedly. "It's probably nothing. The draughts got me through with a caring wife like you. I'll get better in no time." In the morning, Molly excused himself from work and called a doctor at home. The elderly doctor listened to William's lungs for a long time, but did not reveal anything suspicious. "It was nothing. It's just a common cold. But you should still be on bed rest for 3 days." The district doctors gave a correct prognosis on the third day. The man felt better and closed the sick list. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But 2 weeks later, the picture was repeated again. Only now, in addition to weakness, fever, and shortness of breath appeared. Molly called the doctor again, who immediately expressed her displeasure. "Why are you surprised, lady? Did your spouse have to strictly follow my recommendations?" Molly mumbled confusedly. "He did everything." Doctor looked first at the woman with disbelief, then with an unkind look at the patient. "If he had done everything I told him to do, he wouldn't have relapsed." The woman asked the doctor uncertainly, "Wouldn't the husband have something other than a cold? Should we examine him? Should we do some imaging?" I wish she hadn't said that. The doctor was furious in the truest sense of the word. His carefully shaved face, Nellie Elk paint, and vapor appeared on his forehead. "If you know everything, then why did you call the doctor? You think I have nothing else to do." "Nothing to do, but idly run around the neighborhood." The woman was numb with surprise, and the sick man tried to stand up for his wife. "Doctor, why are you yelling at my wife? She suggested a perfectly rational solution. And I don't mind taking a picture. Another smart ass. Your lungs are clear, so I don't see the need." The doctor's tone has returned to normal, but his hands were still shaking when he wrote the prescription. "These are the capsules you'll take twice a day, and you'll have a general blood test before you're discharged." The doctor walked down the hallway, his whole appearance showing that he resented the patient and his wife. Before he left, he stayed at the door for a while. "I have 35 years of experience. If you don't trust me, go to another specialist." On the day of discharge, William did not see the doctor at the clinic and went to see another doctor. The doctor did not even examine him and closed his sick leave. The man hesitantly asked your colleague, saying that I need to take blood for analysis. In response, he heard something familiar. What a literate patient we have now. Everyone knows how to treat themselves, but for some reason they go to doctors. You don't need to test for anything. All your vital signs are normal. You could send him into space tomorrow. The doctors are clearly mocking him. This made William feel extremely uncomfortable. He hurried out of the office and mentally made a vow. "I'll never set foot in this place again. At home." He briefly told Molly about his hike and repeated out loud, "Molly, can you imagine how embarrassed I was? I've never been to a hospital before and I won't go again." Molly did not dissuade her husband, believing that the danger was over. When William had another relapse a month later, he wouldn't let her call a doctor. "Molly, I don't want to go there again. I've got some pills from last time. I'll swallow them. See if they make me feel better." On the third night, my husband's condition worsened dramatically. He began to choke, and his face turned into a blue mask. Panic seized the woman, and she began to rush around the apartment. Good thing her son was home. Mom was running around. "This is getting us nowhere. We need to call an ambulance." The medics who came to the call immediately took the patient to the hospital. Until morning, Molly and her son sat under the doors of the intensive care unit. She had a lot on her mind during those hours. It was good that Thomas was nearby, although he was very worried about his father, but tried to support his mother. "We'll be fine. Dad is strong. He's been playing sports all his life. He's going to make it." But there was no optimism in the words of the doctor who came to them in the morning. "It's a very rare and very complicated case. I've never seen anything like this before. Your husband has an advanced inflammatory process. The outer shell is affected. The heart is aggravated. The fact that the inflammation is affecting important areas, the tissues have, roughly speaking, spread apart. That's why the heart isn't doing its job. I'm not going to get your hopes up just yet. It's a very serious case." She wanted to cry. There were no tears. She wanted to scream, but a gasp and a degree escaped from her throat. Thomas tried to bring her mother to her senses, but she sat in a state of tetanus, not answering his questions. The guy had to seek medical attention. The pungent odor of the tent brought the woman back to reality, and she whispered softly, "Why didn't I do it right away? I felt it to me intuition. How many times it told me misfortune was about to happen." Tears broke the dam. Patience and the woman burst into tears on her son's shoulder. It seemed to her that time had stopped. Every day was similar to the previous one, because even relatives were not allowed into the intensive care unit. They had to wait in the cramped lobby in front of the ward. Almost 4 days Molly spent in this stuffy room. but she never heard anything comforting from the doctors. On the 5th day, her husband's attending physician invited her into the resident's office. His face was impenetrable, but his voice was reassuring. "Molly, we need to talk to you." The woman did not ask the doctor any unnecessary questions and went with him to the next ward. There was no one in the resident's room, and Sebastian noted with satisfaction that my colleagues are examining their patients now, so you and I will be able to talk quietly. The doctor adjusted his horn-rimmed glasses and looked at the woman, who was shaking with excitement. "Molly, do you need to calm down?" Worry and panic are unacceptable in situations like this because they interfere with the common cause. And you and I have a difficult job to do. The woman was surprised to see you and me. The doctor smiled. "Why are you surprised? You have probably heard before that it is difficult for a doctor to cope alone without the help of relatives. So you and I will have to form an alliance of sorts in order to act properly and in a coordinated manner. Are you ready for that?" The ray of hope that shone in the woman's soul began to gain strength at the first words of the medic. "Of course, Sebastian, I will do anything, just to make my husband well." The doctor smiled again. "I didn't expect any other answer from you. And your husband said you were like a tough tin soldier. That could be considered a compliment, though most women are more accustomed to hearing other comparisons." Molly hesitantly interrupted the doctor. "You say William said that. Then he's better." Sebastian drew his eyebrows together, and his face instantly became stern and even severe. "Yes, your husband's condition has improved thanks to comprehensive therapy. But the danger is not over, because the main problem is not eliminated. I will not go into detail, so as not to scare you with obscure terms and try to describe the situation in simple words. As a result of a neglected long-term process, if I may put it this way, an important part of the heart has been put out of action. The tissues are so affected that they are unable to perform their functions. In hospital conditions, we can keep the organ working, but you realize that this cannot last indefinitely. Molly Capital, I understand and do what? Say your husband. Maybe our domestic doctors have developed a unique method of heart valve replacement, but you understand that it will require money and a lot of it." Molly physically felt a ray of hope light up. At full force, she began to nod her head intensely. "Sebastian, I will definitely find the necessary amount of money. You just tell me when the operation will be." The doctor spread his hands. "I can't give you a specific date yet. Although William's condition has improved considerably, he is still very weak. And the second reason is that the method I told you about has some technological peculiarities, which also requires some time. If there are no complications, then after 2 to 3 weeks you can do the surgery. And if I don't have the surgery, what will happen to my husband?" Sebastian looked away. "Unfortunately, in this case, the sad outcome is inevitable. Without hardware support, he won't be able to live at all. Therefore, surgery is the only salvation." The doctor saw the impression his words made on the unfortunate woman. But Sebastian couldn't do otherwise. He knew that it was a crime to encourage both the sick and their relatives. He was truly sorry for this woman who was worried about her husband's life with all her heart. But he could not deceive her. Noticing the burned-out light in Molly's eyes, Sebastian dismissed the professional tone. "Don't despair, Molly. In cases like yours, even the only chance you get is to keep you informed. And as soon as your husband's condition allows me to talk about the surgery, I'll let you know." Molly left her phone number and walked out of the resident's office. She did not yet know where to get the necessary amount of money to save her husband, but she was sure that she would find the money. Exactly a week had passed since the conversation with the attending physician, but little or no progress had been made in the financial matter. The family budget currently has a huge hole in it, because even before his illness, William invested all of his savings in a project he had been working on for many years. Together with his colleague, he decided to create intellectual centers for young people on a voluntary basis. According to the plan, this multidisciplinary center was to become a place where young people would have the opportunity to master interesting directions. The teachers' initiative was actively supported by the city administration, but they said that there was no money for its realization. William came home after the meeting excited, And he was not disappointed with the response of the authorities. As he admitted to Molly, "Of course, I am not a dreamer detached from real life, but I still hoped that besides empty words, the administration will allocate at least a penny. After all, it is necessary for all business a real opportunity for teenagers to do something useful, instead of wandering aimlessly around the city. And then we all lament why our juvenile delinquency is not decreasing." Molly was privy to her husband's clan because she worked for the Department of Education. She had warned William even earlier that they would not be able to get funding from the municipal budget, but her husband didn't believe it. Now that he was convinced of the truth of her words, she wanted to reassure him. "William, but he also knew it would be like this. Should you have thought of alternative means of financing in advance?" The man exclaimed. "Molly, what are you talking about? If you mean fundraising or sponsorship, I'm not going to walk around town with my hand out. I'd rather invest my own money, but I won't be begging." Molly guessed that her husband intended to use the money they had been saving for years to start a family business. Nancy had given them the idea. The daughter even promised to develop a business plan, but then quickly burned out. But the head of the family grasped the idea and infected his son with it. However, until the men did not come to a consensus on the choice of direction of activity, Thomas wanted to engage in the repair of computer equipment. The elder Nance was more attracted to cars, when William's life's work was in danger of complete failure. He said emphatically, "Since it's such a turnaround, I'll put my money in. I think Greg will back me up." Molly was at a loss. "Vova, what about our family business? And what are you going to tell Thomas? After all, the guy lived for this project." The man smiled. "Molly, nothing fundamentally changes, because there are opportunities to combine the two projects. In addition, you can make part of the center's services on a fee basis." The woman objected. "And do you think that people will come to you in droves? If the price is reasonable, then it is quite possible. The main thing is to serve our dishes properly. I hope Nancy will help us with that." "For nothing. She's been in college for 5 years. But it's one thing to think of something and another to realize it." Greg didn't immediately agree to contribute his blood money to the cause. So William had to use his eloquence. He described the future prospects in vivid colors, and he gave in. The companions divided the responsibilities and began to implement the project. At that time, William was already experiencing serious health problems. Therefore, he was in a great hurry to finish what he had started. It was as if he felt that he was hamstrung by illness. Nance handed over the money to the company, but not long before he was hospitalized. Molly therefore turned to Greg in the first place, hoping that their family capital had not yet been put to use. She called her husband's coworker. "Greg, I'm sorry to bother you, but we have an extremely difficult situation." Greg impatiently interrupted the woman. "Yes, Molly, I'm aware of that. I stopped by the hospital the day before yesterday, but they wouldn't let me see William. He's in intensive care. He's in very serious condition. Be strong, Molly. God willing, everything will be all right." The doctor said that only surgery will help William. The man again impatiently interrupted the woman. "Molly, trust our doctors. They are real wizards in white coats. A year ago, a relative of my wife almost gave away the ends, so the woman was overwhelmed by blind rage. She cut off Grigory at half a word. I have also heard about the exploits of our doctors. But I now, believe me, not to stories of miraculous healing strangers. At the moment, I am most concerned about my husband's life. He can only be saved by emergency surgery. That's why I need money." Greg asked cheerfully. "I don't understand, Molly. What does this have to do with me? I want to take our money." "Greg Key, what money?" "The one William gave you to set up the center." The man paused for a few seconds. And then he said firmly, "I sympathize with you, Molly. But to my great regret, I can't help you. All the money has already been invested in our project, and it is impossible to take it back. And in general, in business, such games are unacceptable. Today I gave it, tomorrow I will take it back. We have already rented the premises for the center and attracted specialists for work." Molly shouted into the phone to me what to do. "My husband is dying." The silence lasted almost half a minute. Then Greg hesitantly said, "Don't be so nervous." "Molly, I'd love to help you, but I have almost nothing left. I'll try to ask my colleagues. Maybe a group of us can throw together a little something for a comrade. Although I'm not sure we'll be able to raise the required amount. But you, Molly, keep me informed." She didn't have time to answer because Greg had passed out. Bitter resentment and pain for her loved one overwhelmed the woman's heart. She was sure it would work that way. After all, it wasn't even a month after William had made such a reckless use of their family fortune. Molly pulled out her list of friends she thought could help her. Second on that list was the family of a childhood friend. But Cindy had also flatly turned her down. Meeting her had left an unpleasant residue in her soul, and the woman was afraid to call other people on the list. Molly took the bus to the final stop and unsuccessfully. She made her way to the regional hospital. The woman's brain drills one single thought where to get money for the operation. The most fantastic ways to get the necessary amount came to mind. So she then immediately from the metal and thinking was interrupted by the ringing of a cell phone. It was so unexpected that the woman flinched. She calmed down when she heard her daughter's voice. "Mom, I'm here. Where are you?" "Nancy, I can't talk long now because I'm going to see Daddy in the hospital." Her daughter's answer stumped her. "You're going for a long time, Mommy. Vitaly Semyonovich and I are already tired of waiting for you. We're in a hurry. There is positive news." Molly added a step. Nancy's cheerful voice, especially her words, made her heart flutter and sick. She went up to the third floor, where her daughter was already waiting for her at the elevator. The girl took her mother under her arm and behind Tara Torkina, without giving her a moment's hesitation. "First, let's go to Dad." He was transferred from the intensive care unit to the intensive care ward. The woman was surprised. "Why did you push me then? You told me Sebastian was waiting for me and the doctor in charge called him, but he'll be back soon. I'll tell you a big secret. Dad was seen today by some big shot specialist from the capital. I didn't see him because I got there later. But Sebastian said that today or tomorrow the operation will be decided. That's probably why the head doctor called him in. I hope you found the money." Suddenly Molly's legs gave out. The woman swayed and Nancy frightenedly asked Mommy, "What's wrong with you? You almost fell." She hurried to reassure her daughter. "I'm fine. I'm just emotional today, and it's all about the money for the surgery. Daughter, I don't know what to do. I don't know who else to turn to." The girl remarked with irritation. "But you said a few days ago that there would be no problems. Did I think that the people I was sure of would turn me down?" Molly handed her daughter the list. "Of course, I haven't called everyone yet, but now I'm not sure I should. I don't know what else to do. I was hoping for sympathy, but I've been met with total incomprehension. Even my best friend, for whom William and I have done so much, flatly refused to mom me. Friends and girlfriends like that need to be cut off. There's a reason they say that friends are friends in need. And your Cindy, if that's who you mean, she's a woman. I realized that when I was in 3rd grade, and you were always feeding her. Now you got Molly's gratitude, Nancy resented. You can't talk about people like that. You had to come up with such an insulting nickname for a vacuum cleaner. Aunt Cindy and Daddy's friend have their own problems. And here I am, out of the blue, with my request. Mom, you surprise me. You've been ditched and you're still defending those pseudo-friends on your list. The girl soon read squeamishly and grimaced. I can't stand such slippery characters. Okay, let it be on their conscience. Come on, let's go see Daddy in his room. But don't say anything to him. We'll talk to you later about where else we can get money. I've got a couple of options. What are they? Well, for instance, we could get a loan from the bank, but that's not going to work. It's too much money. Then we could sell something. Natasha, if you're talking about the farm, no one will give us a dime for it. And if we sell the apartment, we'll have nowhere to live. I could ask Adam. Who's Adam? You know, like my fiancé. We've been seeing each other a long time. He hasn't proposed to me yet, but Kathy has relatives, and they have money, and he has an expert appraising paintings and rarities. I don't think we should ask Daddy for your date. Why are you being so conventional again, daughter? There are certain boundaries of propriety that should not be crossed. Okay, you and I are having a real argument and attracting unnecessary attention. A nurse came out of the room with a hammer in her hand. She looked suspiciously at the mother and daughter. You may go through, but not for more than 5 minutes. William is still very weak, so try not to disturb him. Nancy hastened to reassure the girl. Don't worry, we won't talk about serious matters. As soon as they crossed the threshold of the ward, Molly almost lost her senses again. She stared in horror at her husband, who was tangled on all sides with wires from his mouth. A tube was coming loose. The woman rushed to her spouse's bedside. William Dieter, how are you? Nancy did not have time to hold her mother, so caught up with her already laid sick father. She whispered, Mom, you have emotions, or we will be kicked out of here. At this time, the man opened his eyes with difficulty. He couldn't speak as he was hooked up to the machine, but his eyes expressed joy. To keep her mother from messing things up, Nancy pulled her aside and worked on the field. You're doing great and you look good. You look a bit like a diver. Soon you'll be all better and we'll all go on vacation together. Unless, of course, I'm married by then. William's face cut a little in his eyes, and a merry light danced in his eyes. He raised a thumb on his hand, which meant approval in the highest degree. Molly calmed down a little and also wanted to cheer up her spouse. But at that time, a nurse came into the room and in a stern voice said, Sebastian is expecting you. The women left the room, but Nancy stopped on the threshold. Daddy, hang in there. We're going to be all right. The man lowered his eyelids, signaling his agreement with the gesture. Sebastian sat pensively at his desk in the resident's office, flipping through someone's medical records. When the women entered the room, he waved at a row of chairs against the wall. Have a seat. Unfortunately, I don't have much time, so I'll be very brief. Today, your father and husband were examined by a very competent specialist. He's a renowned cardiac surgeon. He and I used to work together. In short, there's a possibility of an operation in the next few days. Nancy jumped up and down in her chair with excitement. Oh, Sebastian, you have no idea what you've done for us, do you? Thank you so much. The doctor looked at the girl for a moment. Saving people is my job, and so far, there's nothing to thank me for. I only tried to speed up the process, because even one missed day does not play in your father's favor. Nancy nodded her head. Yes, of course, we understand. Tell me, will you be operating on Dad? The doctor immediately replied, no, not me. I have a different profile, but don't worry. My friend, who today conducted an examination, works in the cardiac center, and there are specialists of the highest qualification. Of course, no one can guarantee a favorable result of the operation, but let's hope for the best. Molly stammered and said, Thank you, doctor, but I didn't expect that everything would turn out so quickly. The thing is, we haven't raised the required amount of money yet. Sebastian began nervously twirling the pencil in his hand, but he misjudged his strength and broke the writing instrument. Molly, what am I supposed to do now? I worked so hard to get the best specialist to examine your husband. He found a way to operate on him off the books. What am I going to tell him tomorrow? Do you realize the position you put me in? Nancy, I sensed a scandal was brewing. I hastily reassured Sebastian. It's all right. We're going to transfer Dad to this center. Let him have the surgery. We'll pay for it. We can even write a receipt. The doctor looked at the girl with disbelief. A special contract is drawn up for all services, on the basis of which payment is made. Are you sure there won't be any problems with payment? Nancy cheerfully replied, Do I look like a cheater to you? As they walked out of the resident's office, Molly lashed out at her daughter. Nancy, what are you up to? Do you have any idea what will happen if your venture fails? The girl was a little embarrassed. Of course I do. But you, Mom, you're good too. She promised the doctor herself. You know, if you're not sure, you shouldn't promise. It's not like playing in a sandbox. You don't need to teach your mother. Why don't you tell me what you're thinking? Nancy sighed. I'm gonna go with plan B. I'm gonna shake Adam. Failure of your scheme will not give us money, you're expert. I'll give it a shot. I'm not wasting any time. Adam's probably waiting for me. And you, Mommy, stay in touch. Nancy jumped into the elevator, which just stopped on the 3rd floor, leaving her mother at a loss. Molly initially wanted to follow her daughter's example, but changed her mind. Nancy wouldn't let me talk to William. I'm going to stay with him for a while. She went toward the room where her husband was lying. Suddenly, the door swung open in front of her. A strange woman stepped out of the room. Clad in all black, Molly jumped aside, thinking, "Oh my God. What this person needs is a scythe in her hands." The woman didn't even look at her and walked majestically past. It was only when she disappeared into the elevator that Molly came to her senses. Who was this aunt, and what was she doing in the ward to get answers to these questions? Molly rushed to catch up, but the elevator was stuck somewhere between floors, so she ran to the emergency exit. And in less than a minute, she was down on the first floor. But the stranger in black was no longer there, and the woman on duty at the elevator asked in surprise, "Did you lose someone?" Molly gasped after the rapid descent and with difficulty mumbled, "Oh, there was just an elderly woman here." "Say, where did she go?" He waved his hand vaguely that way. "It's your relative. You'll catch up with her, and if you sign." Despite regular exercise, even moderate running was difficult for her, so her strength was running out. When she spotted a familiar figure at the bus stop, as nothing heralded the imminent arrival of public transportation, Molly spared her speed to catch her breath a little. She was almost there when a foreign car dashing to the stop and the driver, a face she couldn't see, said loudly to Kelly. Jump in the back seat, the woman in black rather briskly rushed to the car on the run, thanking the guys. "Oh, Arthur, how nice of you to notice me." At the nimble jerk in the back seat, Molly rushed to the car. "Wait, please." The woman the stranger looked at her with surprise from the window of the car. Molly readied herself, bursting with despair. She unbearably wanted to know what was doing in the room of her dying husband-woman, whom she had never seen in her life. All sorts of thoughts popped into her head, leaving her even more confused. Suddenly it hit her. She had to go back to the hospital and ask the nurse. After the unplanned jogging, her back and legs were afraid, so she had to walk back the normal way. The nurse on duty was sitting at the desk at her post. The girl was dutifully making marks in the patient's medical histories. When Molly asked, she answered without hesitation that she was your husband's relative. "That's why I let her in. She even showed me her passport. Her last name is Nance." Of course, I didn't remember the name. The last name confirms the relationship, so it's legal. And there are no claims against me. This information made the woman freeze in place. The nurse looked at her with judgment. "As long as I work here, I never cease to be amazed at the strangeness that happens to people. First they fight, then they cut ties, then they look for someone to lean on." "Didn't you recognize your relative?" Molly answered nothing. She was tired of the turmoil of the day. She wanted to go home as soon as possible. The thoughts ran restlessly through her head again. She was no longer able to regulate their flow. It was only in the evening that she regained the ability to assess the situation sensibly. Most of all, she was worried about this strange woman who, as if out of nowhere, had exploded into her life. Molly realized that this was particularly unfit to be a mistress due to her venerable age. Then who was she, this stranger? Kathy did not hear the door of her small workshop open. Inspiration had been with her since early morning, and she had decided to use it to the full. At times like this, the young woman's nerves were like a taut string, so she felt the presence of a stranger in the room. "Aunt Kelly, it's you." The statuesque figure of the guardian came out of the shadows. "Yes, my beauty." I had already returned and reluctantly averted my gaze. "How many times have I told you not to cheer from behind? Do you know how unpleasant it is to feel someone else's breath on the back of your neck?" The older woman took a step aside. "I'm not a stranger to you. I just didn't want to distract you from your work. You're doing a beautiful job. And where did this talent come from?" The girl smiled. "You don't know that the gods give people talents, and almost everyone gets an equal share. But not everyone knows about their gift, so I'm still lucky." Kelly crossed herself and said a silent prayer only after this obligatory ritual. She turned to the artist. "You must have prayed all the way through, huh? You probably didn't eat a thing." And Kathy took up her brush again. "I'm not hungry," the old woman exclaimed. "What do you feed on, holy air?" Look at you, all dried up. Come on, drop everything and go to the kitchen. As long as you don't eat, I won't cling from you. And Hayes smiled. Okay. Aunt Kelly, I obey you, and will take the proper portion of food to support my brain and body. But first, you tell me how the trip went. It's really my father, Kelly muttered in the kitchen. I'll tell you everything. She turned and walked resolutely out of Kathy's studio, putting aside her brush and heading for the door as well. The girl had a slight limp, but this flaw was only noticeable upon close observation. Kathy was born with congenital abnormalities, and only thanks to Aunt Tasia this defect was almost completely eliminated. But still the girl was ashamed of her defect and tried to appear on the street less often. She spent all her free time in a small workshop, which was allocated to her by her aunt in her school years. Kathy was in the 5th grade when her talent became fully apparent. She started drawing even before she learned to walk. But even then, laziness and circles, drawn out on paper with a child's pen, represented a whole. The teacher in kindergarten amazed such a little girl draws as a master artist. It is a pity only that Kromchenko was born a chromosome culprit. The girl had different lengths of limbs to minimize defects, and Sina had to lie for months on the hoods and walk with a metal structure on the leg that was shorter. So her only solace for many years remained drawing. In the 5th grade, the doctor allowed her to attend public school. But classmates met the new girl with contempt. They openly mocked the girl, calling her a lame leg, although her family suffered greatly from the ridicule of peers. She never allowed herself to cry in public, only in Kelly's cozy home. She felt protected. All her troubles and offenses the girl also confided only to her guardian Nyasha, and she calmed her down. Don't tear up your heart, my girl. It's not what a person has on the outside that matters. It's what's inside that counts. God has not wronged you with talent. Your drawings bring joy to people. You'll see it. The day will come when the whole world will be at your feet. And Kathy believed in this prediction. All her free time she devoted to her favorite occupation. The young artist's first solo exhibition took place when she was in 7th grade. Then 20 of her brightest works on the initiative of the class teacher exhibited in the lobby of the old movie theater at the local vernissage. Quite by chance, was a correspondent of the regional newspaper. He came to visit his relatives, and they dragged him to the event. The guy was pretty good at painting, and he was immediately attracted to the artwork. Kathy, of course, it is not fashionable, but a clear nugget. I would have loved to meet the author of these undoubtedly talented works in a small village that practically merges with the regional center. Everyone knew each other, so it was not difficult to arrange a meeting between the journalist and the young artist. But Kathy was embarrassed by everyone's attention, and she behaved like a frightened animal. For this reason, the reporter's questions had to be answered by Kelly. Just the next day in the regional newspaper appeared in a small article about Kathy. But the laurels of unexpected fame frightened the girl, and she even missed 2 days of school classes. Concerned about her absence, the class teacher came to their house. Kathy, what is it, school absenteeism or pride? Kelly had to defend her ward's honor. What are you saying, Tamara Mitrofanovna? What kind of pride is that? The girl is afraid to show her face on the street. The class teacher convinced Spring not to do anything stupid. Talent is a very heavy burden. If you let it out of your hands, it won't come back. So the girl, prepare for the difficulties, will not lose its most valuable asset, and still have to go to school. The next day, the family crossed the threshold of the classroom with fear. She was greeted with shouts of, "Kathy, you're great. We're proud of you." Her classmates had even prepared posters. Arthur handed her a bunch of wildflowers. In the evening, she timidly asked permission to walk her home. All week, Kathy was the epicenter of attention. Therefore, when the passions settled down a little, the girl exhaled with relief. Kathy's moment of fame did not pass without a trace. Classmates began to look at her with respect, and she had a real friend in the person of Arthur. But most importantly, no one called her a limp leg anymore. Kelly also reaped the rewards of her first success. The pragmatic woman was eager to channel Kathy's talent in the right direction. One evening, Auntie said, "My gold. Now you can earn your bread with your skills. By the way, a good friend of mine wants to give her husband an unusual gift for his anniversary." Maybe you can paint something beautiful, and Blue could not refuse the woman who replaced her mother. 3 days she worked on the order, and the first client was delighted. It's unbelievable. I had no idea our cabin looked so beautiful in the picture. Everything is in place here, and the backdrop, the well, and even the cat on the bench was drawn that fall. Oh, thank you. That was a great gift, even though all the cheers were directed at Kelly. Kathy felt a sense of creative satisfaction. She'd received a small fee for her first job, but her wise aunt assured her it was a start. We'll raise the price list later. If I wanted to object, Aunt Kelly, it's awkward to take money from your acquaintances. The woman looked at her sideways. It's uncomfortable to sleep on the ceiling because the blanket falls down. Don't think, I won't take a penny. I'll raise money for your studies. The woman sank down on a chair and dreamily rolled her eyes. My little girl, the day will come and you will enter the academy where art is taught. You'll be famous all over the world. Your father, as he learns of your success, will bite his elbows. This revelation made the girl wary, because before Kelly had always avoided talking about her parents. The girl nestled against the shoulder of her guardian aunt. Say, where is he? Why did he give up on me? It's because of my limp you. On Molly's eyes glistened tears. But this time the guardian didn't give a straight answer either. God knows where he is. I haven't made any inquiries about him, and your mother didn't tell me anything. The old woman realized that in a burst of joyful feelings made an unforgivable blunder if she was not a very vulnerable girl. Therefore, the truth about her parents could have a devastating effect on her. The years passed, and Kathy never asked any more uncomfortable questions. Only once did she confess to Aunt Kelly. If he even shows up, I won't talk to him. That statement took the woman by surprise. Oh, baby, who is he? Your father? I'll never forgive him for leaving me. Kelly was ready to tell Sienna the whole truth. Her soul became a volcano. A nasty voice in her head whispered, "Tell everything without carrying it in your heart. A stone is a great sin." She had already prepared for confession, but her lips were numb as if in paralysis. Kathy didn't notice that something was wrong with her aunt. And in a different tone of voice, she said, "I don't want to talk about him anymore. I'll go to the workshop." But as folk wisdom says, you can't hide the truth for long. Since a week ago, the very same neighbor ran in to see her. For her husband, who many years ago and Blue painted a picture. The woman beckoned the landlady outside. Kelly and an urgent conversation. Kelly stepped out onto the porch and closed the door tightly behind her. "Spit it out. What do you got?" The neighbor hesitated, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's false information. You know my sister-in-law works at the regional hospital. Well, I do. What about it? That William Nance was admitted the other day, William, and he's 46 years old. The woman was so dry with excitement that her tongue was glued to her palate with great difficulty. And she mumbled, maybe it's a coincidence. There are few namesakes in the world. Kelly, but the middle name fits. That's for sure. Your husband's offspring. You should check it out. If you want, I'll have my sister-in-law look into it. Okay, I'm fine with that. The next day, the neighbor showed up again. She was impatient, so she let her guard down. Kelly, nothing concrete could not be found out, because this Nance, considering that at death he has a wife Pleasant, such a woman, and 2 children that are already grown up. So they don't leave the hospital. They're all crying. Kelly whispered to her neighbor, or she hears something, and they'd be wary of her. It's all right, she's very impressionable. Tell me, what's wrong with this patient? My sister-in-law said his heart's failing. He's in need of emergency surgery. Nance's relatives don't seem to have any money. The daughter-in-law heard the daughter and the mother talking about where they could borrow money. That's the story. Kelly thanked the neighbor and opened the door, where her family was waiting for her to return. The girl immediately jumped at the guardian's noise. Aunt Kelly, I heard everything, and I understand what you were saying about my father. Is it true that he is dying? The old woman did not expect such a turn of events. Kathy, I don't know. Most likely, it's a stranger who had a misfortune. The girl leaned against the door jamb. What if it's my father? My aunt met him. But you said not so long ago you didn't want to see him. And now I want to see him. What if he dies? I'll never get to see him. I have to go tonight and find out. Kelly realized that her word was no longer valid, and she no longer had the right to refuse Molly's wish to see her father. All that remained was the hope that the full namesake of the man who had once abandoned the girl's mother was in the hospital. Kathy called Arthur and asked him to take her into town. But soon the girl returned and, to the aunt's mute question, answered, "This man is still in intensive care, and they are not allowed. But I managed to talk to our neighbor's sister-in-law, and she confirmed that he was being prepared for surgery. She also said he should be transferred out of the ICU tomorrow." Kelly asked, "If you want, I can go into town tomorrow and find out." The girl cheerfully picked up on it. "Of course I do. I'll ask Arthur." The aunt waved her off. "Don't fidget, boys without end. He'll fulfill your every whim as it is. The only thing I can't figure out is when your obscure friendship will turn into something normal." "What do you mean?" "Kathy, don't play dumb. You're a grown woman. At your age, everyone already has a family and children." The girl's face instantly became impenetrable. "Aunt Kelly, let's not touch that subject. Arthur, he's been great to me. He's a great friend, but I have no right to deprive him of real happiness. Who needs a wife with such a flaw?" Auntie twisted his finger at the temple and with an expression said, "Fool you, and do not treat. It's time to get rid of childish complexes. You are no worse than your peers. All at you and a pretty face and a limp figure. A smart person wouldn't pay attention to that." In the evening of the same day, Kathy snuck into Auntie's bedroom and with a look of conspiratorial whispering, "Aunt Kelly, I came up with." The older woman stared at her in bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" "About that man who may well turn out to be my father." "Go ahead and say it. What stray thought came to you?" The girl put forward her palms, as if defending herself from an invisible enemy. "Only you do not interrupt me well. Come on, do not pull the cat by the tail, and then like a grandfather pike talk riddles. Auntie, I've decided to pay for the operation. I've got money lying around anyway." Kelly jumped out of bed. The shock was so strong that she couldn't utter a word. Only after about 2 minutes the woman came to her senses. "You are definitely insane. Giving money to save a complete stranger. What if it's my father? I'll never forgive myself for not helping him." Kelly sank down on the bed in silence. The hay was silent for a while. Then she said firmly, as if it were a done deal, "Even if it's not my father, I'd still be happy to save someone's life. Guardian." Kathy tried to object timidly. "What about the apartment? I thought you wanted to move to the city. You're not doing too badly here." All night Kelly kept her eyes open. And in the morning, she took the bus to the hospital. She found her sister-in-law at a neighbor's house and handed her an envelope of money. "It's easier for you to do the paperwork here. It's for Nance Williams' surgery." The neighbor tried to refuse Aunt Kelly's errand at first, "But I had never asked you for anything. Do me a favor." Having accomplished her mission, the older woman decided to visit the patient after all. The nurse didn't want to let her into the room at first, but then allowed her to come in for 2 minutes. Kelly immediately recognized him, although she had only seen him in a photograph, which she always kept with her. The woman whispered quietly that was accurate. He hadn't changed at all, only his hair redone. She headed for the exit, but at the door she bumped into a woman who looked like the man's wife by description. Therefore, Kelly did not rush to leave the hospital. She saw that woman following her, but she didn't want to talk to her. All the way in Arthur's car, she kept thinking that it was time to tell Molly. But Aunt Kelly was afraid the girl wouldn't want to do anything with her after that. Kelly did not without haste set the table as well, and at the same time thought, where would she start the conversation with Molly? But the girl beat her to it. She crept noiselessly into the kitchen and asked loudly, "Someone threatened to feed me until I lost my pulse." The elderly woman turned around frightened. "How can you joke like that? My heart may fail from fright. How do you scare me?" "So you've decided to get back at your aunt? Well, thank you. Kelly lived to see the light of day. Appreciate it in case I didn't realize I was overdoing it." She hugged her aunt. "Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I thought we'd have fun together. So tell me, how was your trip?" "Auntie's a little reserved, huh?" She said she was fine. I gave her the money, asked her to make the arrangements. So I did your job. The girl looked into the eyes of her benefactor. You didn't tell me the main thing. Did you see him? Apparently, it's your father. Suddenly, the older woman collapsed in her chair and wrapped her arms around her head. She burst into tears loudly, so it was difficult to make out what she was saying. There is no forgiveness for me. It's all blind hatred. I wanted revenge for my ruining her love so badly. I thought revenge would make me feel better, but it only made it worse. And the blue ones were worried sick about my aunt. What's wrong with you? What revenge are you talking about? I'll tell you everything. I can't carry this burden any longer. Take there in the book on the shelf War and Peace called a letter. Kelly lost her tears, but new bouts of despair overcame her. She told me to give this letter to her, and I hid it. I thought it would be better for everyone. No, I'm lying to you. I was afraid they'd take you away from me. You're blue. The only thing I have for you, I live for. The girl frantically leafed through volume after volume of the legendary work. Finally, out of one book fell a yellowed envelope on the floor with trembling hands. She took out a notebook leaf from it and began to read the lines written out in smooth handwriting. William, I'm sorry I haven't answered your letters. I thought it would be best for both of us. My Aunt Kelly told me right away that I was no match for you. You're educated. I've only got 9 grades under my belt, but I don't regret anything because I loved you and I love you very much. I'm writing to let you know that you have a daughter. I did not want to alarm you, and you would not know anything about us. But as it happens, I don't have long to live. You know that I am not used to complaining, and I will accept everything that fate has prepared for me. The only thing I ask you to take care of is our little girl. And the family did not know how long she sat with this letter, and in her hands outside the window. Dusk was already thickening. My aunt's food remained untouched on the table. Kelly sat on the same table without moving. For a moment, it seemed to her that she was not breathing. The girl rushed to her aunt. Aunt Kelly, don't be silent. You're scaring me. Why didn't you show me this letter before? Why didn't you tell me anything about my parents? I was afraid. I was very afraid that you would be taken away from me. But at first I wanted revenge. But now there's no point in keeping silent. I'll tell you everything. Childhood years of youth flew in a small village, located near the regional center. When it was time to choose a profession, she and her crony Lucy went to enroll in a trade school. Both girlfriends successfully passed the exams and were enrolled. Of course, in addition to classes, and girls did not deny themselves in visiting fun activities. Every Saturday, they went dancing at the House of Culture. There Kelly and met James, who studied at the construction college. Between the young people immediately burst into love, since both of them had already turned 18. They decided to cement the relationship with a somber bond. When they happily showed up at the registry office to apply, the head met them unfriendly. Jesus, you don't have milk on your lips, and you're already in a hurry to get married. Do your parents even know? This treatment angered the groom, and he went down. What do you care if we told our parents or not? We are adult citizens and have every right to enter into a consensual marriage. Really, Kelly confirmed cheerfully, yes, you can't forbid us. The official looked contemptuously at them. Kindergarten. What should I do with you? Write an application. Maybe in 3 months you can think of one. Kelly got a little cocky. No, Auntie's not gonna change her mind. Because we love each other. They filed the application and walked out of the registry office with a sense of accomplishment. James picked the girl up in his arms and spun around with her. We did it. You and I are heroes. The girl was also excited and already imagined herself in a slinky dress. But she didn't want to move beyond the wedding in her imagination. 3 months flew by quickly. Of course, the parents of the newlyweds were shocked when they found out about the wedding. The bride and groom informed them of the momentous event only a week before the celebration. They were very afraid that the ancestors would upset their wedding, but they did not have time to play the wedding fanfare. As the newly married husband received a summons from the military enlistment office, the send-off was also noisy. The young wife, as it should be, promised to wait for her lover from the army. She ran after the bus that took the conscripts away and shouted, James, you write to me. You can write every day and I'll write back. For the first few months, Letters from the soldier came regularly. And then the string broke. Kelly rushed to her husband's parents, trying to find out if he was in some kind of trouble, but there were no relatives at home. Kelly was anxious to vent her frustrations, and Lucy agreed to be her comforting vest. Her friend reassured her not to lie. It's no use. Tears will work out. You know, as in the army, everything is strict. They have their then and then exercises, then combat training. Or maybe your James was sent on a special mission, like in the movies? Kelly believed Lucy because it made her feel safer. She'd heard from a friend that her husband's parents had moved to town. That surprised her. I wonder why they didn't tell me. I'm not a stranger. But apparently they had a different opinion on the matter. Kelly looked forward to her husband's return from the army. But after his service, James did not return to the village. He wrote her a letter asking for a divorce. But Kelly didn't want to let go of the man she was going to spend the rest of her life with. She rushed to the city, where with great difficulty she found out the new address of her husband's parents. James didn't even invite her into the apartment. He walked out onto the landing and, with a graduated sadness, said to Kelly, "You and I have made a big mistake. Good thing this ridiculous marriage hadn't left the aftermath in the form of a couple of kids, such a shame." She's never felt it before, James. And when you realized the mistake, he didn't hesitate to tell you when he joined the army. You see, I felt nothing, no affection. That's why you stopped writing to me, isn't it? It seemed to me that you would understand everything without explanations. The girl angrily muttered, "As you see, I didn't understand." Because dumb, she ran down the stairs and thought she couldn't go on living. She was already imagining how everyone in the settlement would laugh their grief at her. Kelly, as usual, decided to pour her grief onto the shoulders of her best friend. Lucy stroked her like a child on the head, asking Kelly not to cry. "He is not worthy of your tears. You'll find a good guy and you'll be happy with him." She really wanted to believe in her friend's words, and it flooded Lucy's soul day after day. But one day Lucy told Kelly I was leaving. The girl was stunned. "Where? You see, I'm so lucky. Some good friends of mine got me a job in the city. They have dorms there. What about me?" Lucy, friend in surprise, shrugged her shoulders. "Kelly, you're a big girl, you'll manage on your own. I cannot wipe your tears all my life." This statement insulted Tasia to the core, and she did not even go to see her friend off at the station. Time passed, and one day the news came from the city that James Nance had married Lucy. It took her mother a long time to get over it. "That friend of hers has brought you in so cleverly." Lucy soothed and soothed and soothed. And then she stole her husband. That day, Kelly decided to take revenge on her abusers. But she didn't know how to do it in a way that would hurt both Lucy and James. That plan turned into a fix-it idea. A failed marriage had a negative impact on the young woman's life. 2 more times she tried to create a family, but she never succeeded. Therefore, she gave all her undiminished love to her niece Sophia. Sophia was the daughter of her brother, who was serving a long prison sentence in a high-security colony. Sophia's mother led a dissolute lifestyle, for which she was deprived of parental rights. Apparently, bad genetics affected the girl's health. Sophia was sick all the time and was often hospitalized. Kelly was very worried about her niece when she went to the city to study after graduation. But contrary to her worst expectations, the girl changed for the better. After college, she was given a job in this very settlement. But the aunt decided not to interfere with Sonia. She thought it would be better this way. Her niece often called her and came to visit on weekends. One day, Kelly noticed that Sophia's glasses were noticeably rounded, and she jokingly teased her. "What's with you, Baccarat? You must be torturing her too much." Sophia blushed thickly. "No, Auntie, it's different. I'm going to have a baby soon." "Are you getting married?" "Not yet, but don't think anything bad. We've only been seeing each other for a little while, and it was an accident." "It's the first time I've ever heard of babies being an accident." "Does he even know?" "No, Auntie. I haven't told him yet. I mean, I was going to tell him, but I found out William married the girl he was seeing before me. I thought it was wrong to ruin someone else's happiness about myself, and I thought of the child that would grow up without a father, and thought Kelly was beyond angry. She also wanted to tell her niece that she was following in her parents' footsteps. But she held back. Sophia was having a hard time with her pregnancy. Helia had to move in with her. She wasn't born a month and a half premature. The girl was very weak and slowly gaining weight. When she was 3 months old, the doctors discovered she had a defect. At that time, Kelly was still working, but had to settle accounts to be able to help her niece. Sophia was also very grateful, and one day told all about her failed love. When she heard the familiar name, her aunt was filled with anger. Again, are we really destined to endure forever from this family? But the woman did not pursue the idea further, thinking that there are many namesakes in the world. Her niece showed her a picture of her with this guy at the fountain. Kelly immediately felt a shiver run through her, and she barely restrained herself from screaming. It was him. He looks just like James and is as mean as his father. How many times had Sanja convinced her aunt that William knew nothing about the baby? Kelly stigmatized his name. He's going to get a boomerang one day. Daddy's gone before his time, and he's going to go the same way. How can you do that? I'm telling you, it wasn't William's fault. And I don't regret having a daughter with the man I love. But the aunt was not satisfied with the situation. The thirst for revenge and listened to her soul. Several times she tried to find out William's address, but then gave up this dubious endeavor because Sophia was seriously ill. She spent most of her time in the hospital under an IV, and the doctors warned her to prepare for the worst, because one day her kidneys would finally fail. Your niece was not allowed to give birth, and the doctors told her that. But she did her own thing, and Hay was not 5 years old. When she lost her mom, Kelly had immediately filed for guardianship, determined to devote the rest of her life to raising the little girl. Molly felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest from the bad vibes. She could barely stand on her feet. Nancy hadn't called, which meant she hadn't managed to get money from the father of this unknown Adam. The woman walked up to the 3rd floor of the hospital and imagined what her husband's attending physician would say. But she did not have time to reach the resident because she met Vitaly Semyonovich at the elevator. The doctor smiled at her with a friendly smile. As they say, the ice is broken. Tomorrow we will operate on your husband, and today after lunch, we will transfer him to the cardiology center. The woman froze in amazement. The doctor saw her confusion as excitement for a loved one. He gave her a friendly pat on the shoulder. Don't worry, you'll be fine. I'm just sure of it. Citing his incredible business, the doctor said goodbye to the woman. She stood in the corridor for a long time trying to understand what had happened. Finally, it dawned on her, God, why am I racking my brains? Nancy must have arranged the whole thing, but she hadn't told me when she was sure she was right. The woman hurried to her husband's room, but another man was already there. The nurse passed by her with a handkerchief uncovered by a napkin and unhappily threw. Woman, are you interfering with work? Molly rushed after the girl. Tell me, where is my husband? He was in this room yesterday. The girl on the move muttered. When will it all end? Woman, we don't give information about patients. All information is in Tom's desk. Find out about your husband. Molly, I wanted to cry, and at that moment the nurse, who gave birth on the floor in the corridor, said transferred your husband in cardiology. Half an hour ago, I personally took him on a gurney down to the 1st floor. And then the guys from the center moved him further up. There his things, incomprehensible word, unpleasant cut on the ear. But the woman only wrinkled her nose. She thanked the nurse and again headed for the elevator. But the worker decided to supplement the information. You better walk. Our hospital has a covered passage. When you go down to the 2nd floor, walk down the corridor a little bit, and there you will see the sign. Thank you very much. Following the nurse's advice, Molly walked along the indicated route and thought how different people are. They seem to have the same farm. And the nurse was so nervous she couldn't say a decent word. She once again mentally thanked the nurse, who calmly explained everything to her. But in cardiology, she was disappointed. The same young nurse said Nance is already preparing for surgery, so you won't be able to see him today. Then I'll wait. You can do that here. The girl smiled. Actually, we are scolded if relatives of patients stay here for a long time. But I know for myself that waiting under the doors of the operating room, it's the worst of the worst, but there's only so much you can do. Why did you go home and call me this afternoon? Is the surgery really going to take that long? Sometimes our surgeons stay on the operating table for 10 hours or more. That's their job. The girl sighed expressively and smiled again. And in this smile there was so much warmth and kindness that Molly had a little relief from the heart. She walked leisurely along the familiar route to the hospital exit, but was stopped by her daughter's shout. "Mommy, wait!" Nancy raced down the hallway and into her face. One could guess that she had already managed to run a marathon through the floors. The girl ran up to her mother and, out of breath, began to report to her mom. "You have no idea what I had to endure today. I rushed to Adams this morning. He made arrangements with my father yesterday. By the way, not everyone is rich, and Kathy Dad immediately counted out as much as we need. So I took the money from them, and I run back to the hospital to pay for the operation. And they tell me it's all paid for. I'm standing there like a fool. Mom, was it so hard for you to call me and tell me that you've already taken care of everything?" Molly was at a loss for words. Natalia had to make an extra effort to get her mother's ability to speak Nancy back. "I thought you were the one who beat me to it. So you didn't pay for anything?" "No, I called everyone on that list, but I got nothing. However, in the evening I was contacted by Greg, and she said that the college staff decided to make a donation, but the necessary amount is unlikely to be collected. I wondered if there was a secret benefactor who had decided to help us." Molly shrugged. "I have no idea, but it doesn't matter now. The main thing is that your father will live if the operation goes well." Nancy, not without a sneer, remarked, "Mom, let's not do that. If I don't like uncertainty in any form. And I'll be sure to find out who that wizard in the blue helicopter is." "Why blue?" "Mom, it's a little song. A wizard in a blue helicopter will come and give us free money." Molly cringed. "Nancy, can you spare me your jargon?" "I can. But I'd look like an alien and no one would understand me. Anyway, Mom, you go home. I'm gonna hang out here for a while. I'll find out." Nancy's reconnaissance mission didn't last long. She burst into the apartment and, right in her street shoes, passed the trunks into the living room, where her mother was sitting in front of the TV, trying to distract herself from grief. Molly only had time to exclaim, "Nancy, you're not at the train station." But the daughter didn't let her say another word. "Mom, leave your moralizing to me. Then I got such information that you'll faint, and it's not enough to put me in the hospital. You'll go with Thomas then, won't you?" Nancy threw off her boots and sat down on the sofa next to her mother. "Of course we'll be lost without you, but you're distracting me from the main topic." The girl rolled her eyes and inhaled noisily, continuing the tale of my adventures. "Anyway, then I went to the accounting department to find out what and how. And there a lady in glasses looks at me as if I fell from the moon. She says we have no right to disclose confidential data. And I said I have every right to know who paid for my dad's surgery. Imagine, my aunt's mom. From mental effort and even glasses in her body. Nancy was clearly enjoying her little triumph, and Molly had to cut her daughter some slack. "How long are you going to torture me? Let's get to the point. Who is this mysterious sponsor?" Nancy grudgingly curled his lips. "Mom, it's not even interesting with you. I'm always getting screwed over. But if you can't wait, listen. It was arranged by a certain. I got a tip, and I found this woman. She works in neurology and is the daughter-in-law of a woman next door with whom my mother now lives. Hold on tight." And I almost fainted when I heard the last name Nance. What's that supposed to mean? We have relatives we've never heard of. It's an interesting story, isn't it? Molly waved it away as if invisible flies were swirling around her. "Nancy, you've given me such a vegetable garden that I didn't understand anything. Some neighbors, unknown relatives. There's not many people in the world with the same personal details. As far as I know, your daddy has no aunts or uncles. He was an only child in his parents' family. Nancy didn't give up. Mom, there are also third cousins. Nancy, stop it. You're giving me a headache. You don't want to go looking for this mystery woman who quietly dropped off almost $200,000 in an envelope. Do I look like an idiot? I have to wait for the result of the operation first, and then I can go on a thank you mission to that neighbor. Nancy, without getting up from the couch, pulled on her boots. Mother anxiously asked, "Where are you running around again?" "We've got to get the money back." "Yes, of course. And she'll be sure to thank Daddy Adam." "I know without you telling me. By the way, the family has great ancestors. They're both historians. When they were young, they were diggers. Now they write scientific articles. His father tells stories that take your breath away. I should have gone to history school back in the day." "Nancy, at your age, it's time to make up your mind. You're acting like a teenager. When I get married, I'll settle down." After Nancy left to go about her business, Molly wanted to call the hospital to find out how the operation went. But no sooner had she gotten to the phone, which had long been bored on the nightstand in the hallway, than the bell rang. The signal was so loud that the woman flinched. She picked up the phone and immediately heard a cheerful female voice. "Molly, yes, I'm calling from the hospital. You came in today and we had a little talk. The operation was over and everything went well." The woman realized that she had decided to be happy. The same nurse who had a warm smile. She asked me, "Can I visit my husband today?" "No, better tomorrow afternoon. He'll be asleep for a long time after the anesthesia. It's better not to disturb him now." A warm wave of peace spread through my body. Molly took the remote control and randomly pressed one of the buttons. At the same moment, funny characters from a popular children's cartoon appeared on the screen. And sounded so familiar will suddenly arrive wizard in a blue helicopter. The woman threw herself on the back of the sofa and covered her eyes. She thought how good it was that there were still wizards in the world. A bouquet of aromas penetrated through the narrow slit of the poorly closed door to the kitchen. Those matchless smells were filling the pleasant memories. And William asked loudly, so that his wife Molly could hear him, "Do you remember the picnic we had at the old farmhouse on our 10th wedding anniversary?" The answer was immediate. "Of course I remember. Did you and Greg make such a masquerade that the whole village was frightened? You should have thought to degenerate into fur coats and sheepskin coats in the summer. And to walk around the village like that." Molly sat down on the sofa next to her husband, and William smiled at her. "Yeah, me and Greg had a little too much to drink, but the local men understood us. I'm the company that came out of the bathhouse. Yeah, they recognized you as one of their own. 'Cause we had a little too much to drink, too. Yeah, one of them even grabbed a stick and yelled, 'Brothers, the Vikings have come for us.' Then they showed them the Vikings and the 300 Spartans." Why do you suddenly remember that picnic? The smells from the kitchen brought back memories. "That means you're hungry. That's a good sign. Just bear with me. I'll have everything ready soon. I'll fatten you up. You're getting skinny." The woman went to the kitchen, but came back into the room. "William, I want to ask you something. Do you have any relatives living around here? I mean your father's or your mother's family." The man answered immediately no. "All the relatives are scattered all over the country. My parents still corresponded with them. And then cell phones came along. And as strange as it sounds, the connection was cut off." The woman quietly dropped, "So it's a namesake." "Molly, you're speaking in riddles. I must have missed something important while I was in the hospital. Would you be a dear and tell me all your secrets?" Molly was about to tell her husband about the strange story of the money for his operation. But at that time, the door of the apartment with a rattle fell off and firing into the hallway. Nancy reported, "It seems that I'm in time smells so charming." The mother whispered at her daughter, "You know Daddy's not supposed to worry. You could have been quieter to announce your arrival." Nancy soon read the guilty look on Mom's face. "I'll be sure to make it up to you." The girl jumped up. Where did Ivanovich poke her father? "On the way. Hey, how are you?" "I'm fine. Just waiting for an invitation to the table." Mom decided to take me by force. She's making me a tasty hue for the table without calling me. We're gonna rush her now. Let's go to the kitchen. The girl helped my father get up from the couch. Dad leaned on me, but the man took her hand away. "No, I need to start getting settled in slowly. You might want to take your time. It's only 2 days after you've been discharged. Sebastian said that we should gradually get back to normal." Molly looked lovingly at her loved ones. It's a pity Thomas isn't here. William asked when he would show up, promised by the weekend Natalia, forgetting his mother's warning, ran in super. Arseny, and I just planned a very important event for this weekend. Of course, I'm not sure that Dad should. William interrupted his daughter. It's only Monday. Until Saturday, I mind so much that I'll be running around laying out to my daughter what the event is, that our presence is mandatory. Nancy blushed. You don't guess it yourself. The man exclaimed, is it really an engagement? Well, sort of. Kathy and I don't want to make a fuss, but his parents are stubborn. They said it's a tradition that must be honored. You and Arseny will have to be patient. We put up with a lot more than that. By the way, you'll have to be patient too, because Kathy Dad can't live without creativity. He's come up with an unusual format. First, a themed exhibition, but that'll pass quickly, and then a dinner at a restaurant. But everything will be family-friendly, so there will be a chance to relax. Molly happily picked up on it. It will also be a chance to thank Daddy Adam. William was surprised. I'm screwed again. What are you going to thank him for? Mother and daughter, interrupting each other, began to tell how they were looking for money for the operation. They also told of a Jane Doe. Charity William thought for a moment, then said quietly, So I owe my life to a strange woman, and I thought it was Greg who'd done it. He came to see me in the hospital after the operation. He sang such dithyrambs in his honor. Molly remarked sadly, Greg discovered me almost immediately, and so did my best friend. So you should consider whether you can trust a partner like that. Nancy, I decided to contribute to the discussion of an important topic. Yes, it's not for nothing that they say friends are friends in trouble. I hate that my blue one is not like that. So I can safely marry him. William said with a chuckle. We've all come to our own conclusions, but it seems to me that Nancy has the most to gain. She has convinced herself of her groom's high moral character. Most of all, on Saturday, Molly was worried. She tried the method recommended by her daughter to stop the trembling in her body. But it didn't help for long. Worry the woman darted from the closet to the large mirror, asking her daughter, Nancy, do you think this dress is appropriate for a social occasion? Wouldn't you rather wear a sequined evening one? The role of counselor was not to the girl's liking, and she answered with undisguised irritation, Mom, what's glitter in broad daylight? Don't bother, you shouldn't. You look very impressive in a cream-colored suit, but it's too austere. Remember, classics are appropriate everywhere. The woman began to try on the suit, wondering, where did you get such knowledge of fashion? Mom, from the Institute, we studied the history of women's costume and men's too. You don't think your daughter is a total dummy? I don't. You're the best kids in the world. It's the first time in my 22 years I've ever heard anyone compliment me. Nancy helped her mother arrange her hair nicely and was pleased with her appearance. It's beautiful. You should go out more often. You're so confined to the apartment. The exhibition of paintings by local artists was held in a gallery that had recently opened at the Museum of History. Although there weren't many visitors, you could feel the excitement of Nancy. Immediately after the modest opening ceremonies, she disappeared somewhere, leaving her parents to enjoy the world of art. William was still very weak, and Molly kept asking him how he was feeling. William, are you all right? Are you feeling dizzy? For a while, the man patiently replied that he felt fine, but then whispered in Molly's ear, Molly, we are at an exhibition, not in a clinic. Okay, I won't do it again. Also whispering, the woman replied. There weren't many works on display, so it didn't take long to get acquainted with them. The Nance spouses were leisurely settling down around the hall. Suddenly, Molly squeezed her husband's hand painfully. William is concerned? Asked Molly. What's the matter with you, William? There's that woman here. Remember I told you about her, the stranger in black? Yes, the one who came into your room. Only today she's dressed quite nicely. I take it she's my benefactress. I should go over and thank her. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be admiring these masterpieces right now. Molly clutched her husband's hand tighter, and they walked together to the opposite end of the hall, where a decent group of expressionist admirers were crowded together. Involuntarily, Molly listened to the voices and realized that the connoisseurs were discussing the paintings of a young artist named Molly. She also thought what a rare and beautiful name, while her wife mentally marveled at the name of the unknown artist. William couldn't take his eyes off one of the paintings. The work was called Girl on a Swing and featured an airy network of colors. The canvas depicted the fragile figure of a girl in a white polka dot dress. The artist captured the moment when her heroine took off on a swing to the clouds. A mysterious smile froze on William's face. He whispered, "This nymph looks like a girl I used to date when I was young." Jealousy awoke in the woman's heart. "You never told me anything about it before. And where is your nymph now?" "I don't know. We didn't have anything serious. I tried to find her, even wrote her letters. But a relative, Sophia, that was the girl's name, wrote to me to leave her alone because she was married. Well, I didn't bother. Molly didn't listen to her husband. William, then tell me about your love. Come on, there's even a woman standing off to the side." "See, I see. I think now would be a good time to approach her." Kelly immediately recognized the Nance couple in the audience, but she didn't want to rush things. And there was nothing she could do to change that. After talking to Molly, she decided to be completely resigned to her fate. She said to herself, "Let it be as it should be. If I deserve to be punished, let God punish me." And today she didn't want to go to the exhibition, but her family insisted to her aunt, "Stop sitting at home. You're not a prisoner, but a modern woman, and I'd like you to be near me. After all, my success is the fruit of your labor." And Kathy herself picked out an outfit for her and tidied her hair, aunts. At the very last moment, Arthur volunteered to accompany the women. The young man hinted that a pleasant surprise awaited them after the exhibition. "Kelly confidently told me how Arthur was going to propose to you. It's about time, because he's going around and around, and he can't make up his mind." And Kathy blushed with embarrassment, but didn't say anything. Like all girls her age, she wanted to be happy. She felt that Arthur had been courting her for more than 10 years for a reason, but there was still a fear in her heart that her chosen one would suffer ridicule because he had married a girl with a flaw. And today, his determined attitude really surprised her. "If I'm not the one to think, I guess my aunt is right, and I have a chance to be happy. Perhaps the happiness of being loved. It's been bestowed upon me from above for sparing no expense to save a man. I wonder if he knows who helped him." When the loved ones approached Tasia and Makarov, she immediately said, "I knew that you would find me. But your recovery is not my merit." William felt constrained under the piercing gaze of this woman, but he averted his eyes and asked firmly, "Whose?" "I want to thank everyone who took part in my rescue." At that moment, Kathy also came up to them. She smiled, and that smile was the answer to all questions. William swayed slightly, and the young artist said in an ingratiating voice, "I know I look a lot like my mom. You haven't changed a bit." Molly didn't realize what was happening. She looked from one person in the scene to another. "Would someone please explain it to me?" Kelly said dryly, "Yes, I guess it's time to put everything in its place." The daughter had finally found her father. Or did he find her? They'd lived next to each other for almost a quarter of a century, but they met for the first time in their lives. Yes, all sorts of things happen in this life. That's why we shouldn't be surprised. It's been 2 years. Nance. They decided to celebrate the revival of the country residence. William had warned his wife in advance that he wanted to spend time with his family. "Don't you dare invite your Cindy over after everything that's happened. I don't want to look at her." Molly soothed my spouse, not thinking I'm any more stupid than I am. "It'll just be our kids, the matchmakers, and of course, Kelly." "That's right. We can't do without her." The woman looked at her husband sternly. "You don't talk back to me, you try to hide your holes. Why did you never tell me about Mom and Hay?" William waved his hands in despair. Molly begged her not to start. "Again, this was all before I met you. Every man has chance meetings. Do I really have to tell you all this? It's not going to make you feel better, it's going to make you feel worse. So you're saying that you're sparing my ego? What nobility. Molly, I didn't. What was that has already passed, and it is not worth it now, when we are about to have grandchildren to muddy the waters. And I'm asking you to be gentle with Molly, to show some mercy. The girl's been through enough. She's not the only one. I've had my share of bitter water. "Molly, are you jealous of my daughter?" Molly put aside the knife she used to draw the onion and cried, "William, I don't recognize myself. Yes, after you were born a second time, I'm jealous of you of everyone. And I don't know how to get rid of that jealousy." The man pressed his wife to his chest and began to soothe. Do not get rid of jealousy in moderation. Like pepper in a spicy dish, only adds piquancy. But I will now know that after so many years of marriage you love me. There was a clamor from behind, and the couple simultaneously said the children had arrived. Nancy led the procession, followed by Adam, carrying a portable cradle. A little farther along walked Kathy and Arthur, and at the very end of the guest chain was Kelly. Nancy hastily kissed her parents' mom. Dad Thomas would arrive later Kathy's fall. Parents promised to visit your farm next time, although in fact, there's nothing to show. As it was with Ira, so it is. William objected. If only you had the desire, everything else would come. I've been thinking at my leisure, and I've decided, why don't we make a grand construction project for the whole family? How do you look at it, young people? Nancy answered positively for everyone. It's not a bad idea, and there's a rational grain in it. It's hay, though. Adam reacted instantly to his wife's voice. But Nancy laughed, "Darling, you're not the only hay in this company. You now have a namesake, my sister." Nancy threw a glance. Where are the parents? Who were given to the two over the Mongols? Then she looked at the picnic arrivals. Guys, it's only now that I realized how really great it is to have a big family. No, honestly, it feels like you're wearing armor. And Kathy hugged her stepsister. I've always dreamed of having a big, close-knit family, too. Nancy patted her on the shoulder. You'll give birth to a guard of boys or girls with Arthur, and then you'll teach them all to paint. Oh, Nancy, I almost forgot. I have a serious matter to attend to. You know about legal matters? No, that's why Adam's so well versed in the law. What's your problem? Nothing too big. I just want to start some kind of school or art class. I've got the money for it, but I need a good lawyer so I don't get in trouble. William took a break from cooking steaks. Not if it's not your proposal, by the way. Nancy and I have been thinking about a family business for a long time, but we couldn't get our hands on it or our opinions didn't coincide. And now we're in complete agreement on everything. Your idea fits perfectly with the concept of our education center. Kelly sat back and thought. Everyone has forgotten about me. No one wants me at this party. But no sooner had she finished that bitter thought than Molly's voice sounded. Aunt Kelly, why are you bored alone? Come here and give me a little help. I'm coming, Molly. The old woman hurried away, whispering to herself, No, there's still a policy on me. Then I'm still needed.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Lisa did not like to be late for such grand events as the student party. But at the last moment, when she was ready to jump out the door, her mother held her back. Wendy considered it her sacred duty to have a talk with her before each outing. This obligatory part consisted of several recommendations, which Lisa had to listen to carefully and then absorb. Wendy said in a ministerial tone, "Where are you going?" Lisa thought doomfully, That's it. Now the educational work will begin." But out loud she said, "Mommy, I warned you 2 days ago that tonight we have a theme night. In honor of Valentine's Day, there will be a disco concert program and other nice things." The girl started to grab the doorknob, but her mother stopped her with a shout. "Wait, I understand everything, except one thing. Why did you say that as if you were going not to a cultural event, but to a pub? How many times have I told you not to water that skirt? It pulls your ass in obscenely. Mom, everybody wears skirts like that today. You too, at one time wore what was considered fashionable. That suit Daddy and I gave you will fit you better. And as far as fashion goes, I'll tell you one thing, we didn't wear that kind of gaudy stuff. You cannot spit on yourself what does not suit you, such her liver, as now you can afford a tall girl with impeccably straight legs, and you're not doing so well in that regard." The mother slid an appraising glance at her daughter's figure, and after that, she herself took off from her shoulders a fur coat, frivolous pink color. "Go change. I'll wait. Lisa could hardly hold back tears of despair, but it was useless to argue with her mother. What hurt her most was that Wendy had so unapologetically reminded her daughter of her defects. It was true that Lisa's legs were a little out of alignment at the knees, but this flaw was only noticeable on close inspection. The girl muttered under her breath so that her mother could hear her remark. Any mother supports her child, and you always try to humiliate me. Wendy already more peacefully noticed, not grumbling. And thank me later. You can thank me later for the lessons in good taste. You are already 18, and it's time to decide on a style that maximally corresponds to your inner content. After all, this is the secret of a harmonious image of any self-respecting woman. Wendy still long spread on this hot topic, and Lisa in her room tried to pull a suit over the clothes, which greatly annoyed her mother. This disguise technique Lisa had to use frequently, as such clashes with her mother occurred regularly. The operation went well, and she adjusted her hair in front of the mirror just in case she wanted to see if she could get her hands on my hair. Lisa ran out into the hallway and froze under her mother's gaze. But Wendy was pleased with her appearance this time. This is different. Couldn't you have dressed like that in the first place? A nice suit that suits you. You've turned into something else, haven't you? Run along, or I'll be late for my party. Knowing her mother's temper, Lisa had thoughtfully packed a pair of mind-blowing shoes. Wendy didn't even realize her daughter had a fashionable pair of shoes. This hit the girl bought with the money that her grandfather allocated her on the occasion of her majority. At the thought of Trevor, it warmed her heart, but there was no time to be distracted by sentimental moments and put on a fur coat. The girl finally left the apartment unhindered. Immediately from the entrance, she turned on the 4th speed and ran to the administrative building of the medical college, where she studied, but fast movement was hampered by icy ice, and she twice almost fell. Despite her speedy way of traveling, the girl was late for the start of the event. The festival was already in full swing, and she hastily changed her boots for fashionable shoes and hurried to the top, where young people were having a good time. The music was blaring at full blast. The high society made it impossible to focus on one thing at a time. Lisa stood at the entrance for a long time, trying to find at least one familiar face among the dancers. Suddenly, someone took her by the arm and pulled her to the center of the room. Lisa looked up and saw Max's smiling face. "Hi, where have you been? I waited for you at the entrance for half an hour, and then I thought you weren't coming." The girls, as loud as her buddies, screamed at me. My mom held me up. "She's worse than any probation worker I've ever had. Why were you expecting me? I don't remember you making a date with me." Max was just nodding his head or something. Whether he was agreeing with her, or is it the rhythmic movements adding to the background music? All pretty girls have memory problems. When we crossed paths in the cafeteria yesterday, I told you I wanted to go out with you. Lisa couldn't remember the incident and remained silent. She tried to catch the rhythm of the moving dance, but she was hindered by her partner's gaze. Max moved beautifully and still had time to look at the girl brazenly. But even that was not enough for him. And after a few minutes of contemplation of his partner, he roughly attracted her to him and whispered hotly in her ear, "Listen, you so suits this strict costume in the style of Mary Poppins. You look so cute in it, and I'm just wearing a vest." It was only now that Lisa realized that she hadn't had time to take off the costume, which was hiding another outfit underneath. She didn't even want to imagine how Max would have reacted to that provocative outfit. A thought flashed through her mind. Her mom was right about thinking before putting on an outfit that was too revealing. Several times the girl tried to slip away from her overly insistent partner, but Max wouldn't let go of her hand. One popular track was replaced by another, and she had to dance. But most of all, the girl was embarrassed by her beau's vulgarities and compliments. He constantly whispered in her ear something that made her blush. But the young man regarded this as the girl's readiness to continue to get closer. When the DJ announced a short break, Max looked his partner intently in the eye and smirked cheekily. He asked Lisa, "How would you like to continue the evening somewhere in the United States? After all, It's Valentine's Day. Without waiting for a positive answer, Max put his arm around her waist and tried to kiss her. But Lisa pulled away abruptly. Max, you're wasting your eloquence on me. While you have time, look for another girl. I'm sure there will be someone who will gladly accept your proposal. The young man did not want to admit his defeat and asked loudly enough that you break. All you build yourself up, and yourself, probably, only thinking how to get off with a guy like me. Max, you think too highly of yourself. And besides, I'm not really into that kind of cocky. It was, as they say, a college thing. Level 80 bummer. The quiet whispering turned to loud talking, and a couple more started to pay attention to the argument. Lisa wanted to leave quietly, but humiliated by her refusal. Max did not want to let the girl go. One more minute, and a light verbal altercation would have turned into a conflict. But the situation was saved by the timely appearance of Betty. Lisa's friend had a unique ability. She could assess the situation at a glance. Now she also turned on her intuition and realized that the situation would not be resolved without her intervention. Betty grabbed Lisa's arm. "Where are you? I've been looking for you for an hour. We're all here. Come on, let's go." Betty dragged her friend to the other end of the hall, and the classmates began to greet Lisa with cheers from afar. The unpleasant residue from her interaction with Max quickly disappeared, and the girl never once looked in the direction where the rejected admirer had remained. In the circle of her friends, she felt completely safe. But this environment was also nice in that there was Rod within a stone's throw of her. Lisa liked this tall guy with unremarkable looks. Rod was studying to be a dental technician, but he often dropped in on them. Many people thought that these visits were related to Lola, who was considered the first beauty in their group. Lisa was also sure of this version and tried to come to terms with the idea that the guy she liked had chosen another girl. She even now tried to find among the familiar faces a recognized beauty. But alas, she was nowhere to be seen. From Betty did not escape her friend's confusion. She informed her in a whisper of recent events. "If you're trying to find the needle, you're trying in vain. Our queen has warmed up the student party, and even at the beginning of the event left with some major in a cool car. So seize the day." Lisa also whispered to her friend Betty, "Please, no innuendos. You know very well that I am not one of those who act like a hyena. And if I were you, I'd forget my principles. Rob's a good guy, not like his brother." "Who do you mean?" "That bastard I saved you from 5 minutes ago. I didn't know Max was Rob's brother. I just found out. They're not siblings, they're cousins. And as far as I know, they don't get along very well." Lisa didn't pay much attention to this news. She never supported the habit of some girlfriends to discuss other people's family problems. She had enough to do in her own family nest. Just fighting with her mother took energy and nerves, and Lisa was also responsible for her grandfather's welfare. However, Trevor's care was more of a pleasure than a nuisance. In the company of peers of the girl did not want to think about sad things, and the rest of the evening passed cheerfully and interestingly. When the event was over, the students all pile and noise, and songs to the guitar fell out into the street. For about an hour they wandered around the city center, and the townspeople or popular songs about love. Then everyone slowly began to disperse. Rod volunteered to escort Lisa out. "I don't know your exact address, but they say the neighborhood where you live isn't exactly peaceful, so I'm just gonna have to walk you out. If you don't mind, of course." Rob looked at Lisa and his eyes danced off the typewriter. The girl smiled too. "This is the first time I've heard that I live in a creepy place. I even got scared, and I gladly accept your offer." They walked leisurely along the snowy streets and chatted about nothing. Suddenly, Max blocked their way. With his usual swagger, he began to reproach his brother. "This meeting. I wondered who dared to steal my girlfriend. Turns out it was you, little brother." Rob cut him off. "Max, stop making a fool of yourself. You have a bad habit of making a circus in public places. You got a bad habit of getting in my way too. Well, I won't spoil your evening. We'll talk about manners later." Max abruptly made a full turn, but slipped and almost fell. Everyone is against me today. Having a bad day, Yu looked at his brother once more, then at Lisa, and whistled. The familiar motif disappeared into the alley. Rob felt embarrassed in front of the girl because of his brother's ugly act. Don't mind him. There's a saying about a child without an eye for a reason. Max never used to make such a pass at me. We were even good friends for a while, but then he was replaced. That's why I try to stay away from him. Our mothers rarely talk to each other anymore either. It's been a black cat for a long time. If they meet now, it's only at the funerals of their closest relatives. Lisa realized that her comments in this situation were unnecessary. She kept silent the rest of the way. They said goodbye warmly at the entrance of her house, without making any arrangements for a future meeting. But the next day, Rob showed up at their building during a big break. Lisa spotted him as she hurried to her lecture. The girl nodded a greeting and wanted to go on her way, but Rob asked her to stick around. Lisa, we didn't break up very well last night. Why don't we go out tonight? Or go to the movies? The girl's heart was racing, but she tried not to show her excitement. We could go out. I just have to be sure to show up at home. Rob smiled. Strict control. Sort of. My mom tracks my every move and thinks it's the right thing to do. Good. Chuckles. We'll keep your mother's best interests in mind. Meet me at 6:00 p.m. all right. Lola walked past, head held high, but she didn't even dignify the guy who had been eyeing her for so long. But Lisa bumped into her in the doorway of the auditorium. Lola saw her rival with a glare and remarked sneeringly that she had already picked her up before I could throw it. In principle, I don't mind. You can use it. Guys like Rob are not my type. Lisa didn't even take offense at her classmate, because she knew that she had only clothes and entertainment on her mind. Betty, as always, saw and heard everything. She looked disapprovingly at the bun and said very loudly, "There are some people in our ranks who happen to be used to categorizing people, and I think that such specialists should not be allowed near the sick." But the mare with skin and on her this remark did not affect. Not a single muscle on the doll-like girl's face, and only the cold blue eyes glared defiantly at Betty. "And if that's a pebble in my garden, you're trying in vain. Because I'm not much affected by such moral lessons. Yes, I'm really not going to carry around a duck or an enema. That's a pleasure I'll leave to the likes of you. Betty, your name's good, but the rest of it doesn't fit." After a brief pause for convincing, she shared her plans with the same arrogance. "You girls are so primitive, and I truly sympathize. After all, unlike you, I will be working in a place that you dare not even dream of." Lola gave Betty another glance, then looked at Lisa. "Keep in mind, any minute I could blow the whistle, and the dog would come running after me." Her rival wanted to take a jab at Lisa, but she pretended not to hear her last words. All the girl's thoughts were centered around her upcoming date with Rob, and she didn't even catch the essence of the lecture. Every day the smell of spring was more and more palpable in the air. This incomparable aroma stirred the imagination and made young hearts beat more often, students of the final year of medical college. Neither were strangers to such excitement. Most of the girls sat in the lectures with absent looks, and the teacher tried to get through to their minds. Molly talked monotonously about the high purpose of nursing. A nurse was and remains the main assistant of a doctor. And you, my dears, should understand what responsibility will soon fall on your shoulders. Unfortunately, this understanding sometimes comes late. For example, now you are sitting on your mind somewhere very far away. And then, when new personnel come to the workplace, there is an anecdotal situation when one young specialist knows how to put an enema and the other where to put it. And this is not an anecdotal case at all. Molly knew how to keep the attention of the audience, and after her words, all those who were in the clouds returned to the ground. Laughter spread through the audience. One of the girls even dared to add to the collection of cool flavors of young doctors. "Molly, that joke is long out of date. If you'd like a more recent one. One of your students recently surprised the entire medical community. It happened during internship in one of our city clinics, when the post nurse asked to collect tests in one of the wards of the department. The trainee, not thinking long, grabbed a basin and went to the specified ward. The thing is that all the men in the ward were subject to examination, and the girl decided to collect biological fluid from them in bulk. There was a peal of laughter in the classroom. Lola jumped out of the classroom with the words, "You are all assholes, and I hate you all. Are you laughing? Are you laughing?" While we have the chance, Molly urged everyone to calm the girl down. An unpleasant story can happen to anyone. That's why you shouldn't take your fellow man's blunder to ridicule. Perhaps the nurse incorrectly explained the task to the trainee. The teacher interrupted the girl who had previously told the blunders. In vain you, Molly Lola, are defending. The reason for her frequent ups and downs is that she does not think it necessary to look at least occasionally in textbooks. And then these specialists go into hospitals and treat patients. I think the problem of low qualification of novice specialists is very relevant today. By the way, it fits perfectly into the framework of your lecture. I do not want to humiliate anyone here. It's just a shame, so to speak, for the honor of the uniform. Molly had to admit that the student was right, and I dare to bring up the student's mishap. Betty, said Lisa in a low voice. Can you imagine what will start tomorrow at our college? Lisa was intrigued by this phrase of her friend. I think the tick will dig up on Mila. I don't think, I'm sure. Do you know who Lola's dad is? No, I'm not interested in knowing. And you should. Her mom works at the Ministry of Education, and her dad runs the entire pharmacology department. Such smart people have such a clueless daughter. It's a sad fact, of course. But I truly feel sorry for our Molly. She's really one of the best teachers. The girls were still cracking up a little on extraneous topics because the brain refused to perceive such serious material as the basics of the sister case. Barely the bell rang, the future medics flocked and shoved out of the classroom. Betty pushed her friend to the side and pointed her hand toward the hall. Look already, and poured her resentment into the first returning vest. Lisa turned to the side where she did not look away, watching the girlfriend, and saw Max comforting Lola. This touching scene made no impression on her. But Betty, with a sneer, said, You don't know they're dating. No, I'm not interested. Right? Why would you look in other people's windows when there's a light shining in your own? Did I almost forget that you and Ra are having an affair? Honestly, I envy you. Lisa winked playfully at her friend. Like you don't have a date. Don't join me. And anyway, I think it's a little early for us to think about a serious relationship. Personally, I'm going to continue my studies in the near future. My dream is to become a doctor. I like endocrinology. Betty rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh no, I've had enough of studying. I've listened to enough brainwashing for 2 years. My main concern right now is getting my internship published. Betty stopped the class at half a word and looked at her friend expressively. Speaking of birds, do you know where we're going to be sent to do our hours? Lisa shrugged her shoulders, which meant she was indifferent to the question. Yes, I don't really care, but I've heard that our course assigns emergency hospitals and city clinics. It's not unusual. They do it every year. It'd be nice if they did. I heard some of the kids are going to be sent to the countryside. Relax, that's only for paramedics and dentists. By the way, Rob was also sent to the district hospital. Goldie laughed hilariously. And what will a budding dental technician do there? Get his hands on designing statutory jaws for old people. You're holding it in for nothing. You have a wrong idea about the people of the hinterland. My grandpa, FYI, lives in a place like this and enjoys our medical care. And last year he got new teeth, even though he spent all his savings on it. But he is satisfied. And the teeth look like real teeth. Now my grandfather eats everything with pleasure. He used to eat nothing but soup and cereal. You're lucky you have someone to visit. I have all my relatives concentrated in one place. It's not even interesting. As all hot topics were exhausted, the girls headed for the locker room. Betty was tidying her hair in front of the mirror and suddenly remembered the stunning news. We've been talking a lot, you and I, and the most important thing slipped my mind. Anyway, in case you didn't know, I'm authorized to tell you that we're planning a graduation celebration. You mean graduation, but that's a long way off. My friend was expertly applying raspberry-flavored gloss to her plump lips. No, that's not what I mean. People want to get together before their internships. After all, for us, the educational process is essentially over, and I'm a little sad. How do you feel about that idea? Positive. But depending on where and when to gather tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow will be known. But we got a campground in mind. It's not far from the city. Kathy's dad runs it. And when we leave at the beginning of May, everything falls out very well there and the holiday weekend. So we're looking at 3 days of mind-blowing partying. And Kathy's dad promised us the lowest possible rate. Lisa's mood immediately dropped and there was no escaping Betty's gaze. This change. What are you doing? Girlfriend's gone soft. Financial problems. Money's not the problem. It's something else. If it's just for 1 day, it's not a problem. But 3 days is a problem. You know my mom, Lisa, you're not a little girl anymore. Talk to your folks. Seriously, don't let them cut off your oxygen. I'll try, but I'm not sure they'll let me go. See for yourself. Lisa thought Betty was upset with her. She herself had berated herself for being insecure and not being able to stand up for herself. But she couldn't stand up to her parents either. And it wasn't even because she was still completely dependent on them. It was the traditional upbringing. Lisa was used to her father and mother deciding everything important in her life. Lisa was not wrong in her assumptions. As soon as she hinted at a possible trip out of town with a group of fellow students, Wendy immediately cut her off. Don't even think about it. You're not going anywhere. Lisa whimpered. Mom, well, why, I'm an adult, and I have the right to do it myself. I don't deny it. You have the right to do whatever you want. But you, daughter, you don't know what a roller coaster life is. I don't have anything against hanging out with friends, as long as it's an adult-supervised activity. Will you have a teacher with you? I don't know. Gold didn't say anything, but one of our girls' fathers works at the campground. One adult can't handle a whole bunch of right-wing kids. The girl's father, James, did not hear the beginning of the conversation, but caught the main point, decided to intervene. He addressed his wife, Wendy, in a joking tone. Maybe it's time to let your daughter go. I often get the impression that you keep Lisa like a dog on a short leash. The comparison angered the woman. James, don't you think you're hurting our girl even more with that comparison? Imagine what they're going to do on this very campground for 3 days. Wendy, but they're adults. You could say they're ready specialists. And then, we cannot with you, and you cannot guard our daughter for the rest of her life. Such control can have the most dire consequences. Lisa already knew in advance that her mother would be the winner. Her father always gave in to his wife, and he did it for the sake of peace in the family. So she didn't wait for the argument to end and went to bed. To be honest, she herself was not eager to go to unfamiliar places with a bunch of students. If there had been a flu in the company, then it would still be possible to grieve. But the girl's conscience was at ease, for she had made every effort to persuade Wendy. But in the morning, an unheard-of miracle occurred. Her mother herself came to her room and with a puzzled expression on her face said, Daddy and I talked yesterday and decided that you could go away with your friends. You don't have to fight off the collective. The girl rushed to her mother and squealed with joy, Mama, you are the best parents in the world. I promise to behave myself. Lisa immediately called Betty to make her friend happy. She had been walking in high spirits all day, but late in the evening, the joy was also suddenly cut short. Just as it came unexpectedly, the daughter received a call from Trevor. Wendy talked to her father for a few minutes and then called her daughter. Lisa, the idea of you, grandfather personally asks. No sooner had the girl picked up the phone from her mother than she heard the old man grumbling unhappily. Lisa, why have you forgotten your grandfather? I'm sitting here alone in 4 walls, and I don't know what to do with myself. The girl tried to justify herself. Well, I came 2 weeks ago. So, I was fine then. Now I'm suffering from blood pressure or something else. You're a doctor. You'd have come and diagnosed me correctly. Okay, Grandpa, I'll come as soon as I get a chance. And you go to the clinic tomorrow. You have good doctors there. Trevor shouted into the phone. Don't give me advice. I know where to go myself. Tell me, granddaughter, why should I go to hospitals when we have our own doctor in the family? Grandpa, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a nurse, and I haven't gotten my diploma yet. I don't care. Some nurses are smarter than doctors. When I was in the hospital, they had such smart girls working there. Lisa was surprised at her grandfather's assertiveness. Trevor had never allowed himself such methods of influence before. The girl listened to his speech, and her mother watched her. Finally, Lisa put the receiver down on the machine. Wendy asked her grandfather. The lady did not even expect such a thing from him. It's not surprising. People change over the years, and our grandfather is 74. That's a very respectable age. What did Mom decide? Why are you asking so many questions? Of course I'm going to Grandpa's house. He's really lonely there. It's his own fault. If it weren't for his bad temper, how many times I've suggested he move to the city. But he won't even hear of it. Mom, there's something I don't know. Tell me, when you go to Grandpa's house, let him tell you his secrets. Believe me, he has so many secrets, you could write a whole book. Until that day, Lisa had never thought that her relatives might have secrets of their own. Her parents had told her a lot about their past. Grandpa liked to share memories too, but all those stories only reflected the part of their lives they were proud of. After her mother's carelessly thrown phrase, the girl realized that there was another part that they themselves did not want to remember. Trevor had a strong character, like any man used to a simple life. After the untimely death of his beloved wife, Miranda, he was left to grow old alone. At first it even suited him, but over the years it became increasingly difficult and dreary to live as a lone wolf. But most of all, he was worried about the thought that he might one day fall asleep and not wake up in his two-room apartment. He reproached his daughters with this possible scenario. You have all gone to different cities, and I'm the only one here. God forbid, I'll die. No one will ever know. They'll lie there for a year until the neighbors sound the alarm. Kelly's eldest daughter reacted strongly to such remarks. Father, we've offered you so many times to move, and Wendy has good conditions. My husband and I have a big house, and we live alone now that the kids are gone. So your claims are unfounded. The old man wasn't going to back down. He was making his main argument. I don't want to live in your penthouse. I'm used to my apartment. Kelly was shocked at the truth and her guess. So you're suggesting that one of us drop everything and move in with you? Yes, that's exactly the format I'd like, and I don't see any obstacles to its realization. That's when Wendy had to step in. Daddy, it's okay that my sister and I have husbands and children. A normal husband should be able to understand the difficulties. I'd understand if you were married for the first year, but you've been married for 20 years. Kelly is already a grandmother herself. She could have moved in with her father, and at least give your men a break from you. It was useless to convince the old man that such a mode of life was unnatural. Trevor had not particularly considered the opinion of his girls before, and in his old age he began to ignore their problems, practically the same way he treated his grandchildren. Kelly had 2 sons, but grandfather did not think very highly of them. Every chance he got, he reproached them for not listening to his advice when they were young. When Sam and Anthony were small, the grandfather dreamed that his grandchildren, like himself, would work on the land. Agronomist is a very respected profession. Such specialists are always in demand. You, Sam, would be very well suited for such a job. But you, Anthony, you have a penchant for iron. I've been watching you. You'd make a good mechanic. But the boys disobeyed the oldest of the family. Sam became a lawyer. Anthony chose to become a structural engineer. Trevor was very worried. His daughters heard a lot of unflattering statements on this subject from him. Probably for 5 years, the storm raged in the soul of the old man did not subside. Grandchildren repeatedly try to establish relations with grandfather, but he did not go to the peace, although gifts from them accepted. After the loss of confidence in the hairs on the male line, the center of love of the old man shifted to Lisa, and the desire of his only granddaughter Lisa to become a nurse finally melted the ice in Trevor's heart. After all, his late wife Miranda also devoted her whole life to medicine. Well done, Lisa. If your grandmother were alive right now, she'd be very happy. After all, my Miranda was the most respected person in our village. People came to her day and night for help, and she never said no to anyone, except she couldn't keep herself safe. Or is it my fault she left me so soon? At this point, Trevor usually fell into melancholy, and sometimes he shed a tear. This time his grandfather began with a reminiscence too, but beforehand he issued a series of rebukes. When Lisa rang the doorbell, the old man began to reprimand her from the doorstep. If I hadn't called, you wouldn't have come at all. Nobody lives in the same skin. The threads from the same cup from which I drink the bitterness of this life. Lisa knew it was best to keep quiet during Trevor's opening speech. She quietly threw off her light cloak, ignoring the grandfathers and lamentations, headed for the kitchen. Checking on the stove, pots, pans, the girl asked, "Food. What should I cook? Do you have groceries? Or should I run to the store?" Trevor immediately switched to a more pleasant topic. "Further, if you do not bother to go to the store, buy there something at your discretion for a long time, and the real soup did not eat something. If memory serves me correctly, you're under Nina's supervision." An old man, looking down, "Nina doesn't come to me anymore. I sent her away." Lisa looked at her grandfather with all her eyes. "Grandfather, of course, I have no right to lecture you, but you can't do that. You had a woman assigned to you in social services. You kicked her out. Then your buddy's granddaughter took care of you. You said goodbye to her too. Now it's not you who's shown your aunt the door. How are you going to go on living? You can't be so unloved." Trevor listened to my granddaughter, head bowed low, scolding me. I can't help myself. That's the kind of temper I have. All because I'm green with boredom. I wish you'd move in with me. The girl hugged the old man. "Grandpa, don't start. Because I'm torn right now. But imagine for a moment what I'd do here." Men with hope looked into the eyes of his granddaughter. "But your grandmother worked here all her life and never complained." Lisa did not want to upset the old man with a sharp refusal and turned the conversation in a more positive direction. "Okay, Grandpa, I'll run to the store, and then I'll make you your favorite soup. We still have plenty of time to talk." The girl headed into the cramped hallway, and the old man followed the family man, followed by his granddaughter. I almost forgot. Have you stopped by the drugstore yet? Buy me some joint ointment. I can't get out of bed in the morning. Trevor took some new bills out of the dresser. Get yourself something nice too. I've been saving up for your arrival. You'll be at my place for a while. The old man looked at her with almost childlike hope, and Lisa realized that this was the question he was most concerned about. She kissed her grandfather. "And I'm coming to see you for a whole week. If you haven't escorted me out before." A smile shone on Trevor's face, and the girl thought how little it takes for a man to feel happy. After a hearty dinner, the old man finally approved. He sat in the kitchen and watched his granddaughter put things in order. In contrast to him, Lisa was not satisfied. Grandfather had only 2 weeks to get this year. It's not hard to wipe the dust once in a while. "I'm sorry, old man. I'm forgetting what I was doing and what I should be doing. You're the best instead of telling your grandfather off. Tell me, how's your young life?" The girl perfectly understood the trick of the grandfather, but decided to pretend that she did not notice it. "Yes, everything is fine. Soon the internship will begin, and then I'll get a diploma. But for that I need to prepare." The old man waved his hand impatiently. "Work and study are all fifths. You'd better tell me, how are you doing on the personal front? With whom? Or are you expecting a prince? Basically, I'm a grandfather. I don't believe in it for a long time, but maybe I have a good one." His name is Rob, and he's graduating from college this year too. Only he has a different major. He's a dental technician. Trevor with a tongue is a very good profession. Always a piece of bread and butter. Hang on to that, kid. What kind of family does your Rob from? Lisa was confused. She'd never inquired about her beau's lineage. Grandpa, I didn't go into that kind of detail. All I know is that Rob has a brother who is a very unpleasant type. He goes to our college too, but I try to stay out of his way. The old man suddenly perked up. Why is that? Where did the antipathy come from? Lisa blushed. She didn't want to tell the unpleasant story that happened at the disco in February. But the old man guessed it himself. He was hitting on you. Sort of. But I solved it quickly. Max and Rob are cousins. Betty, my girlfriend, said their moms are. For what reason? I don't know. I don't need to know. Granddaughter's not always lucky enough to have relatives. You don't know. I had a brother too. Trevor sighed heavily and thought. By the strained expression on his face, the girl realized that she shouldn't pester her grandfather with questions. The thought flashed in her head that if he wanted to, he would tell her himself. But the old man, holding his back, left the kitchen. I'm going, granddaughter. I'm going to lie down my joints. I'm going to use the ointment you brought. Trevor disappeared into the bedroom and didn't show up until late afternoon. Lisa decided to take advantage of the opportunity to clean up the big room. She opened the balcony and the door, and fresh air rushed into the room. Trying not to make any noise, the girl dusted and laid out. Scattered on chairs and armchairs, grandfather's things on the shelves of the closet. She didn't even notice how it started to get dark outside and was about to close the door to the balcony. How did the disgruntled landlord show up? Lisa, you wanted to kill me too. You let in a draft. My whole body is already aching. Grandpa, but you were resting. You could break your legs here. Don't exaggerate, because from your words it turns out that I'm the last one. It's cold here. Let's go to the kitchen. You put the kettle on, and I'll tell you about my brother. To be honest, I haven't been interested in his fate for a long time. I don't even know if he's alive or dead. Probably the latter. Andrew is 5 years older than me. He must be in his 80s now, if he's still alive. Aromatic tea, beautifully flavored by the cup, was shared on the table. And Lisa, holding her breath, listened to the unusual love story that made siblings enemies forever. Trevor and Andrew's parents were simple people. Ben went through the entire war and was only lightly wounded once. Returning home, he went about his usual business, laboring from dawn to dusk in the field. At that time, there was a catastrophic shortage of equipment, and mechanizers themselves repaired tractors at night and went out to the field in the morning. Ben's wife worked on the farm, so the older children were responsible for the younger kids. But Andrew did not like this division of responsibilities, and he could not wait until the end of school. True, the parents did not oppose the desire of the eldest son to get an education. On the contrary, they praised their son's success in front of all acquaintances and neighbors. Our Andrew will definitely become a boss. He is such a serious guy, not like Trevor. Listening to such speeches, the younger brother was angry. The boy wanted to prove to the whole world, and especially to his older brother, that he was not worse than him. This competitive process lasted for several years, but Andrew was still more successful. After the institute, he returned to his native village, and he was immediately appointed deputy chairman of the state farm. The young specialist openly boasted of his position, trying to prick his younger brother, who together with his father fought in the field for Trevor's harvest. They were immediately taken into the army for the very reason that there was a shortage of people who could operate machinery so easily. The shortage of personnel was also affected by the consequences of the past war. Only at the age of 23 the guy was called up for service. Then he spent 3 whole years mastering the military business in the Baltic Fleet, and after demobilization he returned home. During Trevor's service in his native village, there were serious changes. There was a new 2-story club, and it was now possible to get to the village on a smooth asphalt road. There were changes in the family, too, as my mother told me at once. Our Andrew was going to get married. You had just been taken to the service. Like us, they sent a paramedic and after school. Miranda's name. Good girl. At first, Trevor didn't pay any attention to the news. He himself was burning with impatience to meet the girl who had seen him off and had been writing letters for almost 3 years. But his mother looked pityingly at her son. Hush, you don't have to go to Nancy. The boy was surprised. Mom, what are you doing? I've been waiting all 3 years for this day. The woman repeated stubbornly. I'm telling you not to go. Nancy, you got married and went to town. I guess she wanted to hide from the shame. I didn't expect such a trick from her. She was like a daughter to me. She used to visit us almost every day. And then she stopped. For almost 6 months, Trevor suffered this personal tragedy. He became withdrawn and even talked to his parents only when necessary. But one day, the mechanic sent him into town. Trevor needs to get some spare parts for the machinery urgently from the warehouse. So I'm giving you my car for this purpose. But you must realize that every day counts. So make sure you get it done quickly. Trevor is accustomed to fulfill the assigned task and immediately went to the mountains. What was the guy's surprise when at the very warehouse where he was supposed to get the necessary parts for repair, he met the same Nancy, who did not wait for him. A wedding ring glowed on the young woman's finger, and this burned fire into Trevor's heart. He looked his former lover in the eyes for a long time. Then he asked, "Why didn't you write to me? It would have been fairer than marrying in secret." Nancy suddenly burst into tears. "Forgive me. Hush, my hasty marriage was a necessity. I had no other choice. So can you at least tell me now what happened? I'm not going to interfere with your family life, but at least I need to know the reason for your infidelity. You'll see. It's better if you don't know. I still don't understand how it happened." And the girl's frightened story, often interrupted by sobs. Trevor realized that his personal happiness had been interfered with by his older brother. When Trevor left for the service, Andrew courted Nancy for a long time, but their dates were secret, and no one knew about the fact that the older brother had stolen the bride from the younger. Nancy kept waiting for Andrew to propose. But then the beautiful Miranda appeared, and the lover began to avoid the girl. Nancy was ready to come to terms with her fiancé's betrayal, but to her horror she realized that she was expecting a child. Time flew inexorably, and she had to act decisively. One day the girl springs Andrew in a secluded place to tell him that he will be a father. But the man recoiled from her. "Nancy, leave me out of this. It can't be. After all, you and I have only twice had an unknown child by you." Such reproaches were painful to hear. And the unhappy girl begged Andrew, "I had no one before you. You know that very well. I'm pregnant with you." But these pleas and tears did not hurt the guy. He also ruthlessly threw in the girl's face. "Your tears, Nancy, will not help. You yourself know very well that I cannot marry you." Nancy seemed as if her heart had left her body. "Why, Andrew?" "Nancy, what kind of silly questions are these? First of all, I can't marry my brother's girl. Second of all, I already have fiancés. You may have heard that I'm dating Miranda, and we're getting married soon." Nancy froze in place. Andrew was gone from her life forever. For weeks, the girl didn't leave the house and her parents feared for her health. She searched for a way out of the situation, but found no good solution. Nancy confided to Trevor that she had the urge to lay hands on herself. Had it not been for Jacob, she would have carried out that intention. But this guy, whom Trevor knew well, convinced the girl not to go to the extreme step. To me, or I at once proposed to marry him, and I agreed. We moved to the city right after the wedding. Trevor was worried about the most important question and the child where. Nancy started crying again. Perhaps it's all my own fault, or is it heaven's punishment? The boy was not born alive. All the way back, I silently thought only about what a bastard his own brother turned out to be. After all, he is, in fact, maimed to the wall of life. Now this cheerful girl is more like a mummy. He did not yet know what he would do, but he was firmly convinced that he would find a way to take revenge on his brother. Apparently, the heavens were also on his side. Just the day after the trip to town, Trevor accidentally injured his arm while repairing his tractor. Blood gushed from the open wound, and the men carried the lad to the dispensaries. From the mere sight of the wound, Trevor began to shake, but the paramedic reassured him to be patient. "My dear, now I treated your wound, and then for the neck." And Miranda took up the needle. The guy passed out. I had to bring him back to consciousness. When he woke up, the girl was surprised. Usually men don't faint at the sight of blood. "And you passed out right away." Trevor was ashamed. "I'm sorry, I didn't expect it myself. I saw a lot of scares when I was in the Navy, but this is the first time it's happened to me. It's probably a reaction to the massive bleeding." "Are you dizzy? Nauseous?" "To be honest, I really don't feel well. I was pretty nervous yesterday. My instructions are to send you to the hospital." "Trevor, there's no need to resist. I'm resilient. I'll be as good as new tomorrow." "All right, let's see what happens tomorrow, but we'll make a deal that you go home right now and go to bed." "Well, I can't. I got a job. I can't talk about work until you're fully recovered. I'll write you a note. And now I'll call your brother. Andrew is your older brother." Miranda kept her promise, and 10 minutes later, Andrew arrived at the paramedic station. But instead of words of sympathy, Trevor received a torrent of insults. The older brother shouted at him, not choosing expressions. "You idiot, you fool. The Almighty rewarded me with a brother. Admit it, did you do it on purpose to spite me? Now they're gonna use me in every meeting. Okay, if it was just about me, you've put our entire household in jeopardy. They're going to start proceedings now. They'll send a commission to rule that we're not following safety procedures." Miranda tried to stop Andrew's fiancé. "What are you talking about? Your brother's in trouble. And instead of sympathizing with him, you insult the man. Such a misfortune could have happened to anyone, and to you too." Big Brother first said to Miranda in a strange tone, "Stop covering up the headiness, and in general, I think it is inappropriate to breed calves whose tenderness here." No sooner had the door closed behind the window than the parents burst into the paramedic station. The mother began to wail beside her son, and Ben offered Trevor assistance, leaning on me. "Let's go home. You're scary to look at. White as a sheet." The paramedic escorted them to the exit and warned them to be sure to come back tomorrow for dressing. Trevor was on sick leave for almost 3 weeks. He went to the dressings every day and marveled at Miranda's ability to perform manipulations quickly and skillfully. They had a lot in common, and they could talk about nothing for a long time. But one day this idyll was interrupted by Andrew. The older brother burst into the medical station during a routine procedure with a solemn look. He declared, "Which is exactly what I needed to prove. Caught you in the act." Sitting courtesy of Miranda didn't have to listen to reproach. "Andrew, leave the medical office. Are you interrupting my work? I'm already getting in your way." "Well, Miranda, I declare to you with all responsibility that I will not allow you to corrupt the population. I will report your unbecoming behavior to your superiors today. What are you doing in the workplace?" Trevor's arm wasn't quite healed yet, but he wasn't afraid to stand up for the girl. "Andrew, I don't care if you're the boss. If you don't clean this up right now, I'm gonna kick your ass." Perhaps it was this determination of the younger brother that brought Andrew back to earth. He looked angrily first at the girl, then at Trevor. "You still got it in for me. I don't forgive those who humiliate me." Andrew walked away. They sat in confusion for a long while longer. Trevor was the first to break the silence. "Martin, don't worry. It's all just threats. I know my brother. He won't go beyond words. Andrew, he's just trying to play tough. In reality, he's not calculating, and he won't go for it." Trevor was not wrong in his predictions. Andrew, he only made promises. The next day, he showed up at the paramedic station apologizing. "My dear, I'm sorry. I overreacted. I said a lot of mean things. It's all my brother's fault. He used to turn me on with his antics when I was a kid. The girl didn't even turn around. But when the man wanted to approach her, she firmly said, "Andrew, don't come near me. It's over between us. And it is good that you showed your nature before the wedding. You are not a good man, and I am afraid of you." The rejected suitor collapsed on his knees. "Mart, I'm sorry. It was a momentary lapse of judgment. Any man can lose his temper." "No, not anyone. I'll be honest with you. I didn't expect this from you. And no need for theatrics here. It won't change anything." Humiliated by Andrew's refusal, he left and never showed up at the paramedic station again. A month later, Trevor and Martin married at the village hall. The newlyweds did not plan to leave the village, but Andrew did not keep his word and began to take revenge on his brother. So the young family was forced to move to a neighboring region. In the new place, they were welcomed with open arms, and 5 years later, they received an apartment in a new house. Lisa was shocked by her grandfather's revelation. She had no idea what trials this man had to go through. After all, it must be very hard to disown your own brother. Trevor looked at his granddaughter with an inquisitive gaze. "Do you mean to ask if I was looking for a meeting with Andrew?" The girl only nodded in agreement, and the grandfather concluded his tale. "Perhaps it is cruel, but I did not want to see him. My greatest fear then was that it was you in the image of my brother." From the life of another girl. Soon, Andrew got into big trouble at work and left. He wrote to his parents, but I didn't read those letters. Then things started to change in the country. And as far as I know, the brother became a businessman. A cry of pain in my lower back. The old man took a thick album out of the dresser drawer. At first I had the urge to burn all the pictures of my brother, but then I changed my mind. Look here, we were photographed together on my shipment. Lisa carefully took the yellowed old snapshots in her hands. "You two look so much alike." Yes, my granddaughter even confused us sometimes, but 5 years of age difference is still a big deal. "Grandfather, be honest, if you had the chance, you'd like to see your brother." The old man lowered his head again, as if on a clean floor. There was an answer to this important question. "I don't even know, Lisa, what to tell you. I've been thinking a lot about my past life and my present life. I guess I could forgive Andrew now. In my heart, I forgave him a long time ago. And as for seeing him, I don't think he's alive. My parents died, and I never found out. Where's the brother?" Grandpa, after this conversation, as if immediately by nickname Lisa, even worried about his state of health. But the next day, Trevor already complained about the life of neighbors and inattention of daughters. So the girl decided that it was better not to bring back his memories. The beginning of practice was marked by one not quite pleasant event. Golden was sent to the regional hospital and Lisa to the city polyclinic. But the unpleasant situation was that there also got the hated Lola. Max has already managed to get used to the department of the medical institution and decided to conduct a tour for the girls. The guy met them at the entrance and looked at Lisa with undisguised gloating. "I want to advise you young girls not to show your character here. The polyclinic has a long-established team, and the old-timers are reluctant to accept newcomers into their ranks. That's why the main rule here is to keep a low profile." Lola cheerfully noted Max not to stir up mud. "Such problems are eliminated. Just need to cover a good field, and everything will be tight-top. There is not a single case of refusal of freebies in history." Lisa had been stunned before by a classmate's language, and she couldn't keep her mouth shut. "Lola, if you're going to communicate with patients in your own language, you're going to need an interpreter." Lola, as usual, looked down at Lisa. "Are you the smartest? Or are you showing off for Max? Maybe it bothers you that I'm dating him." The girl calmly answered, "Neither. I don't care about Max at all. I'm more concerned with practice now, and I know well the public that visits the clinics. They are mostly old people, children, and women. Eka, Ms. Know-It-All. Personally, I can do without your consultation, and in fact, I do not plan to stay here for a month." She promised to arrange for me to spend the entire internship at his friend's clinic. Lola and Max moved on down the corridor, and Lisa decided to leave the company. The young man asked Lisa, "What are you standing there for? Let's catch up." "Thank you, but I'd rather walk the floors myself. It'll be safer for everyone." "Lola, meet me at the superintendent's office." The girl reached the end of the long corridor, and she completely lost the desire to go up to the third floor. She went back and waited for the head of the department to appear. Soon, the intern noticed, energetically stride along the corridor, stocky, middle-aged man. He was smiling. "Oh, a new addition. We've been waiting for you for a long time. We have a critical shortage of specialists at our stations. Nurses have to work in emergency mode and serve 2, and sometimes even 3 sites." The head opened the door of his office. "Come in and let's get acquainted." He extended his hand to Lisa. Lisa made a reciprocal gesture. "Lisa, I'm not the only one who was referred to you. There's another girl coming in now." "That's fine. There's no time for a warm-up. So we're going to assign you to experienced sisters right away. Your job is to listen to your mentors, do what they say, but we're sure there won't be any problems. After all, you and without 5 minutes ready nurses." The head's optimistic speech was interrupted by the appearance of Lola. She slipped neatly through the open door and asked angrily for Lisa. "Sorry, I'm a little late. I was familiarizing myself with the polyclinic." Nick repeated what Lisa had said, but Lola listened to the superintendent inattentively and even tried to make eyes at him. But the man did not pay attention to the flirtation of the brightly painted girl. He only warned girls, "We have a very different environment here. Therefore, I ask you to dress in full compliance with the requirements of our institution, and bright makeup is not welcome here either." Lola poked, but said nothing. Nick called for the head nurse. Not more than a minute after his call, and a stately woman of about 45 years old entered the office with a brisk gait. "Yes, Nick." The superintendent briefly recounted to the assistant. "What is her task?" "Adriana, I would like to ask you to help the girls to settle in. Hopefully, they will like our clinic and express their desire to stay with us." The head nurse smiled welcomingly. "Let's go, girls. I'll bring you up to speed, and then together with me you'll go to the action zone." The new Adriana looked at her carefully again. "I said something wrong." Lola poked forward into her lower lip, signifying the highest degree of her displeasure. "I have the impression that we are not in a medical facility, but in a soldier's barracks." The head nurse took the girls under her arms, but before doing so, she closed the door of the chief's office tightly. "That's what my dear girls nail on your pretty insects, that in any medical institution, the main thing is discipline and subordination. That's why we have a regiment akin to the army. If someone doesn't like it, you should change careers before it's too late. I understand what I'm saying." Lola lowered her eyes, but her plump lips continued to whisper something. Lisa had to answer for 2. "I understand, Adriana." "Good. Then the young guard will follow me." A quarter of an hour later, they were already sitting in the car, and the nurse was voicing the plan of further actions. "So, my girls, I have assigned you to the areas where I am now temporarily replacing the nurses. Your appointments will begin this evening. Before that, we need to make a round of the bedridden patients, mostly elderly people who need special care." Lola blurted out, "And we were told in college that all patients should be treated equally." Adriana gave Lola another unkind look. "You must not have been listening very well. In medicine, we practice an individual approach, and district nurses have to be a bit of a psychologist." Lola poked out of habit, and the mentor decided to put the insolent trainee in her place. "Girl, are you all right with your health?" Lola stammered, "Sort of all right." "Why did you ask?" "Snorts. How were you in the stall?" "And that's a sign of an upper respiratory problem. Maybe you have maxillary sinusitis. It's a disease that's dangerous to the patient and to others. Get it checked out just in case." Lisa wanted to show her support for the head nurse with a standing ovation, but she only smirked and looked at Adriana gratefully. The woman understood the look and smiled too. Lola did not utter another word. For over 3 hours, they drove around the city, and Adriana talked about every sick person they visited. Some she took their blood pressure, others she gave them an injection. Memorize, girls. Are you going to go to those addresses tomorrow? We're almost there. We only have one last address left. It's the highlight of our program. So please, nothing too much, including inappropriate emotions. They pulled up to a nice 2-story mansion. The driver signaled, and the gates began to slowly open. Noticing the surprised faces, the trainee, Adriana, explained, "Our Andrew lives in this house. A very important person in the past, a successful businessman, and even a bit of a scientist. I don't know all of them, but I think he even has state awards for special contributions. The old man is very unhealthy, you could say conflicted. He has diabetes and a bunch of other ailments." The door was opened by an elderly woman. Noticing the head nurse, she nodded affably. Already she's nervous, saying you're late, and Adriana paid no attention to the woman's remark. Our old man has a small staff of servants. His son and his family used to live with him, but he literally chewed up his relatives, and they left. Now he's on his own. He pours out his discontent on anyone who comes to hand. Lisa expected to see an old man almost dying, but in the office the desk was piled with books and newspapers. Sitting there was an elderly man in a velvet house robe. At their appearance, he adjusted his expensive rimmed glasses. "Ah, you're the one. You're late today. I already checked the sugar myself." Adriana put the emergency suitcase on the nightstand. "You're a real unicum, Andrew. There's traffic everywhere. We've joined in a little bit. We're gonna take you now. Okay, I'll forgive you for the first time, but I hope it doesn't happen again." The man looked at the trainees incredulously. "Who are these young ladies?" "Young cadres. It's good to have someone to pass on experience to. I also try to make the most of it. My time is allotted to me." The man looked at his desk. "I wanted to write memoirs at first, but then I thought that someone would start digging into my biography and changed my mind. I decided to gather all my experience in agriculture into a single whole. Yeah, I'm a loner. Don't be surprised. I've been involved in some of these things." The old man tried to flirt with the head nurse, but he did it awkwardly, unexpectedly. He rolled his eyes and started pushing himself to the floor. Lola squealed in fear, and Lisa managed to pick up the splintered neck of the body because she was closest to the old man. Adriana threw towards Lola an unkind look. "Girl, you better get out. We don't need panickers here." Lisa was not distracted by her surroundings. She carefully laid the man on the carpet and turned his head on its side, then took hold of his wrist. No pulse visible and a faint filling. Adriana squatted down next to the intern. "Sometimes our Andrew has attacks like this, but no matter how much we persuade him, he won't go to the hospital." The head nurse filled a syringe with medicine and gave the patient an injection. The old man breathed more evenly and slowly opened his eyes. "I don't even want to hear about hospitalization. I'll die at home. It's a little early. You're talking about dying. You've still got the kind of energy that would make any young person jealous." The women picked up the old man and led him to the couch. Taking the opportunity, the man reminded Adriana of his long-standing request. "Sinchenko, you never sent me a good nurse, or have you completely forgotten about my request? Andrew, how can you say that when I sent you 5 people? They're inexperienced. One of them can't do anything, and the other one forgets to wash her hands. And I have a weak body. I could get an infection. And then what?" The old man became agitated, and his breathing increased again. Lisa sat down next to him. "You need to rest now, or you'll pass out again. Can I get you some water?" "Yeah, if it's not too much trouble, there's water in the carafe of cookies. I don't drink poison from the tap. They've polluted the environment. Now you can easily get poisoned by plain water." Lisa brought water. The old man drank small sips and kept looking at the girl. "Quench your thirst." He handed the glass back to her and turned to Adriana. "She's a nice girl, and she has a pleasant appearance, That's the kind of nurse I'd like to have around. The main nurse is confused. Andrew, Lisa, we've only got her first day of internship. She doesn't have her diploma yet. What does a diploma have to do with anything? That girl has a positive energy about her. One visit from her is soothing. Lisa made eye contact with the head nurse. What's wrong with that offer? Adriana threw such matters out of the window. Lisa will do her allotted hours at the clinic, and then she will do her internship at the hospital. Okay, we're late for our appointment. The old man said goodbye to them and promised I'd try to solve the problem myself. Lola was waiting for them in the car. She was silent all the way back to the clinic, only at the end of the way. When they drove onto the overpass, she hissed with the same anger. You're doing a great job, turning your whole hide inside out. Lisa replied in the same tone. Are you in pain? You should show what you can do. I muttered in confusion. When that old man collapsed on the floor, I myself was frightened and almost collapsed. If you panic from such events, the only place for you to work is the registrar's office. Lola looked at Lisa with interest, and her eyes were alive and sparkling. Listen, that's not a bad idea. Sit by the window and smile at everyone. A crowd had already gathered around the office to which Adriana had directed them. But Lola sat on the couch for 3 hours with an indifferent look, and no one paid any attention to her because everyone wanted to get out of the line and go home as soon as possible. Almost every 5 minutes, the doctor would send the intern somewhere for tests or for the result of someone else's cardiogram. By evening, Lisa's feet were burning. She barely made it to the apartment and collapsed on the couch. Wendy leaned over and touched her lips to her daughter's forehead. Lisa, you don't look well, but you don't seem to have a fever. The girl smiled. Mommy, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just that I ran so many kilometers in a day that even my legs are twitching. Wendy covered her daughter with a blanket and went to the kitchen. From there, she yelled. Grandpa called. Asked how you were doing. I said I was fine. Tired and all over my body. Lisa herself did not notice how she fell asleep. Images of the past day flashed before her eyes. But at the center of the mosaic was the old man she had given first aid to. The thought flashed through my mind, who this grandfather reminded me so much of. It was already dark outside the window when her mother gently woke her up and called her to dinner. She told her parents about all of today's adventures and forgot to describe the special patient. The next morning, Lisa barely crossed the threshold of the polyclinic. She was summoned to the office of the head of the clinic. Noticing that the trainee got worried, the head nurse patted her on the shoulder. Don't worry, beautiful. You distinguished yourself yesterday, and it became known to the superiors. In short, go to the head. He will explain everything to you. The girl knocked on the door with a sinking heart. Nick greeted her like an old acquaintance. Come in, Lisa, sit down. We will have a long conversation with you. The man began to state the essence of the case 100 by 100, nodding on the table with a pencil. I have no right to order you around and can only ask one favor. Lisa tensed and quietly mumbled. I've done something wrong. The superintendent smiled. What is it about this actress? On the contrary, Adriana spoke very highly of you, and one of our patients, you won him over in a heartbeat. You mean the old guy we saw yesterday? Him. Very mean grandpa loves to make complaints about everyone. He's made complaints about us too, but there's nothing we can do about it. Our vocation is to treat the sick, regardless of their peculiarities. Anyway, Andrew liked you very much, and he demanded that we send you to be his nurse. The girl was surprised, but that's not possible. I have to work hours in the hospital on the ambulance and in other units. The superintendent put his pencil aside. I think we can settle this matter if you agree to a special mission. You see, Lisa, our patient is not a simple man. He has a special merit, and he's manipulating it. It's useless to fight him. It's better to submit. But in my practice, I have to account for every day, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll sign everything and thank you separately, if that's okay. Then I agree. Nick is happy. Thank you, colleague. Then you will take up your duties as of today. Lisa headed for the door, still not fully understanding what had happened. But the superintendent stopped her and forgot to tell you the most important thing. There are some costs to being a caregiver, so you'll be able to recover some of them. Mostly moral. Lisa went to a familiar address. She was greeted by the same silent housekeeper. The woman didn't even say hello, just nodded toward the stairs. He's waiting. Andrew she found in the men's bedroom and lay in bed, covering her eyes and sighing heavily. At the girl's appearance, the sighs increased. Lisa came closer. "Hello, I was asked to look after you." The old man's voice was cheerful. "Asked by whom?" "It was me who asked, because you have a professional streak in you. I've had a lot of lame asses sent to me before. I'm not feeling well today. I should take your blood pressure and check your sugar. Then a neck massage would be nice. I hope they taught you how to massage." The patient kept asking questions, and Lisa had no time to answer them. After the standard medical procedures, Andrew wanted to get some fresh air. "Lisa, there's a stroller down there. Would you be so kind as to bring my transportation up here? I don't have any energy today." They walked in the garden for over an hour. And the old man didn't just want to breathe the fresh air. He demanded to be taken to one corner of the territory and then to another. During the movement, he was happy to tell the girl about his scientific work. "I am an agronomist by basic education, but I did not work in my specialty. For many years, all sat in responsible positions. And then, when the whole world turned upside down and bosses joined the ranks of the unemployed, I decided to go into business. You could even say that I was one of the leaders of this movement. I won't hide it. Luck didn't smile on me right away. Twice I ruined everything to nothing. Only later, when it turned out that the light was forever extinguished in my window, I remembered about my diploma Lizhinka in this garden, all the results of my work. Of course, I was not alone in creating new varieties of vegetables, flowers, and fruit crops. I was helped by like-minded people. During the walk, Lisa learned a lot of interesting things, but the constant tension had a strong effect on the girl's health, and by the end of the day, she could hardly move her legs. On reaching home, the girl collapsed on the sofa again. Wendy was worried. "Daughter, what kind of patient did you get?" "Probably an energy vampire." "Leave him. He'll take all your strength." But the girl didn't listen to her mother's advice. The first week was difficult, but she survived the ordeal and even got used to the quirks a little. Andrew. The old man then pretended to be terminally ill and refused to walk on his own, then jogged in the park. At the end of the week, the patient paid off the young nurse. When Lisa counted the money in the envelope, she thought, "For this kind of reward, I'm willing to put up with a couple more months." But the older man had a very different calculation. One day he said to Lisa, "Lisa, you suit me in every way. I would very much like to have you in my house all the time." The girl wanted to refuse such a tempting offer, but the old man beat her to it. "Don't be so quick to say no. I'm not just offering you this alliance for no reason. And for a certain remuneration, I've managed to insert a nurse. Andrew, I'm not really interested in money. And then I have a family and a boyfriend I'm going to marry." Tears glistened in the old man's eyes. Family. Such a small word and so succinct. I had a family a long time ago too, but I was too young. And for me there were very different reference points. "Lizhinka, if you don't mind, go to my office and bring a notebook with memoirs written on it. At one time I even counted myself in the ranks of geniuses, but then I realized that I am just like everyone else, no more than an ordinary unhappy old man." This lengthy monologue of the ward left a disturbing feeling in the girl's soul. It seemed to her that she had already heard such arguments, but there was no time to strain her memory. And Lisa went to run errands. Andrew's office was not gloomy. That's because the heavy curtains were pulled tightly as the girl walked past the shelves of books. She accidentally touched this light construction, and a photograph in an antique frame fell on the floor. In the semi-darkness, it was impossible to make out the image, and she placed the picture at random on one of the hangings. Not without difficulty, Lisa found a large leather-bound notebook on the table labeled Memoirs. She thought that Andrew was about to read out excerpts from this work to her, but the old man went deeper into reading, and she was sent home. "Lisa, you may be dismissed. I shall expect you tomorrow morning as usual." The girl had no sooner reached home than she remembered where she had seen exactly the same picture. There was no complete certainty yet. After all, the old man's study was dark. It only seemed to her that there was a resemblance. She thought she'd find out tomorrow. "I think I should carefully sneak into the study and reread the memoirs of my special patient." At the threshold of the apartment, she bumped into her mother. "Wendy was surprised to see you early today. Your grandfather is fine. By the way, your own grandfather called and expressed his displeasure. I support him. Instead of looking after other people's relatives, you should look after your own." Her mother's emotional remarks again caused concern. Somewhere in a remote corner of her brain there was a thought that the girl could not grasp. For days, Lisa had been trying to catch a good moment to get into Andrew's office, but it was as if the old man sensed it and gave her different errands, which took a lot of time. Only on Saturday, he felt weak again and went to bed. The nurse settled down next to him. We took his blood pressure every hour. When she noticed that he was dozing off, the girl tiptoed out of the bedroom and into the study. She pulled back the curtains as she approached the shelving unit. Immediately, she was stunned. It was the exact same picture as her grandfather's. Oh my God! How did I not realize Andrew was my grandfather's brother? Lisa rushed to the table, where a thick notebook with a detailed biography of the old man was still lying in a prominent place. But at that moment there were footsteps behind them, and a familiar voice said with condemnation how unkind it was to rummage through other people's things. "And I thought so highly of you." The owner of the house stood leaning on his cane and stared at the nurse. "I guess you and I will have to part. That's a pity." The man turned, but Lisa with despair. Andrew exclaimed, "Wait, I'll explain everything to you now." The old man froze in place. "What did you call me, Andrew?" "How do you know?" "My real name." He turned again and slowly approached the girl. "Bug. I didn't realize. Have you had a chance to study my memoirs?" No, I haven't even drawn them to your notebook. I only looked at that picture over there because the old man's face turned stony with tension. He was worried, and Lisa was afraid he might have another attack. He tapped his cane demandingly. "Why didn't you say something? You're talking. I'm giving you one last chance to justify your ugly deed." Lisa herself approached the old man and, looking him straight in the eye, said slowly, "Andrew, I am your brother Trevor's granddaughter. You haven't forgotten that you have a brother." The nurse had expected anything but such a reaction. The old man was outraged. "He's the one who sent you to me on purpose. I don't want to hear anything about him. He ruined my life, took my fiancée from me, thanks to my brother. I'm a miserable existence now, and no one cares about me." This outburst of emotion drained the old man of his last strength. He collapsed in his chair and sobbed. Lisa did not know what to do. She was afraid to approach the man, lest she make him even more angry. But Andrew himself commanded, "What are you standing there for? Your eyes are bulging. See, I'm not well in Capri. Take some drops of sedative. And get some water to drink." The girl rushed to carry out the order, while one thought was pounding in her head. What should I do next? The old man took the medicine and closed his eyes. Lisa stood next to him, afraid to move. "Why are you standing there like a dead man? Do you think I believe in your fairy tales? Admit it. You're a con artist. You've been trying to gain my trust on purpose so you could inherit my estate. I know the type, but I'm not fooled." That kind of accusation pissed the girl off. "What the hell do I need your mansion for? I'm already regretting that I met you. My grandfather and his tricks are not enough for me. Now you've fallen on my head. I've had enough. Find yourself another nurse. Lisa was relieved to have said all her grievances to the old man's face. She rushed out of the office, but the owner's voice came from behind her. "Lisa, wait. Why are you so quick to take offense? I didn't say anything bad to you. Stop it." The old man caught up with her at the stairs. The most surprising thing was that he moved briskly without using his cane. "I didn't even realize you had a temper. It's our breed." "Ak, you're hot." "So you say it, Trevor. The girl is barely alive." He told me everything. And why you quarreled, and why you cannot forgive each other. He told me about Nancy, too. The old man waved his hands vigorously. Then everything passed, flew away, and was forgotten. Just lyrics. "You'd better tell me where he's holed up." "He lives in a village outside the city. Miranda, my grandmother died long ago, and my grandfather is only one, and as mean as you. Now, I believe that character is passed on by genes. Let's save the high theories for later. I'm pretty good at genetics myself. That's not what concerns me." The man paused and asked confusedly, "Do you think we should not meet? That's for you to decide." "All right, I'll think about it. You call right away today." Lisa is very tired. After all the upheavals of this unusual day, it was even difficult for her to move her tongue. She mumbled something indistinctly and hurried to leave the house. But the old man from above shouted, "Lisa, you're not going to leave me after everything that's transpired. You'll come back tomorrow. I'll give you a raise next week." The girl stumbled to the bus stop. She mentally berated herself. Why did I get involved in this story? Now my grandfathers will drink all the juice out of me. There was one, and now there are two. Her parents had already had dinner. Wendy put a plate of vermicelli and a cutlet in front of her, and Lisa ate, picking at it with her fork, and her mother watched her. "What's wrong again? You can't take everything to heart. It'll burn so fast. If that mean old man's bothering you again, you should dump him, Mom. It's not just a patient, it's Grandpa's missing sibling." Wendy opened her mouth in surprise. "Andrew, that's the one. Can you believe it? Living practically next door to each other and not seeing each other for half a century. I thought stories like that only happened in movies and novels." "Daughter, what are we gonna do?" "Now I'm thinking about it myself. We have to tell Grandfather first, and then we'll decide. We'll consult with your father. He has a clearer mind than you and me." After a family meeting, the three of them decided that it would be better to organize the meeting with the consent of both parties. Lisa insisted on it because she was afraid that two old people might not be able to bear the shock of the meeting, but she could not foresee what happened afterwards. On the agreed day, James went to the village in the morning to pick up his father-in-law. It turned out that Trevor was not ready yet. The son-in-law began to wait patiently when he would bring himself in order. But the old man began to interrogate him. "James, why didn't Lisa show up herself?" "She's at work." "I thought you said Andrew had a nurse on the books." "Yeah. Well, that's her job. I mean, it's a practicum. So the granddaughter I've devoted so much to is grooming this scumbag." James realized that the brothers' reunion was about to be derailed, so he decided to yell at his grandfather. "Trevor, you asked to go to your brother's house, and now you're going to leave. I think it's time we put aside our past feuds and grudges. It's been half a century." This reprimand had an effect on the old man, and he puffed unhappily and went out into the living room. "James, if I look like this suit, my brother's an oligarch. He'll laugh at a simple tractor driver." Anticipating a new round of discontent, the man cried out, "Oh my God, this song is good. Start again." Finally, the car pulled away from the driveway, and Trevor froze in the back seat. In an hour or so, James and his relative aboard made it to the other end of town, where Lisa and her ward were already waiting impatiently for them. Everyone at the meeting was anxious, and it was noticeable. Trevor got out of the car and looked around first. "Yeah," the brothers waving his chorus. "It's not like we just gave them all 30 squares in an apartment. With Lisa's help, The older brother also took a closer look at the guest and went out on the front porch, even giving up a bone for the occasion. Lisa, put that away. I don't want Trevor to think I'm helpless. The girl silently accepted the aid and helped her ward down the steps. Andrew did not hold back from making a visual comment. Actually, a lot of honor for him. But okay, I only tolerate myself. I don't know why I'm doing all this. James, or from behind, watched as the old men walked towards each other. With each step, the distance between them was shrinking, and it seemed like they were about to embrace. And that would be the end of the era of brotherly enmity. But the elderly men stopped, not daring to take the last step. The younger brother coldly said, I didn't expect to see you alive. Do mole that you died a long time ago. But Andrew didn't put words in his pocket either. Likewise, brother didn't expect to see you alive either. But I'm glad. I must admit I'm not very glad. I've long since gotten used to not having anyone. Lisa realized that everything was about to fall apart with her and her father. Right in front of her eyes, she gathered all of her grandfather's talent. Please don't fight right now. It's such an unusual day. It's been so long since you've seen each other, hasn't it? Trevor didn't let his granddaughter finish. Lisa, who are you in front of now? You've traded me for that rascal. Don't you realize he's taking revenge on me after half a century? I'm right, Andrew. Lisa's patient didn't understand what the guest was accusing him of. Trevor, what are you talking about, brother? Are you planning to win my only granddaughter to your side with your wealth to avenge Martha? Trevor, you're out of your mind. You must have been stung by a poisonous bee this morning. I waited for you like a man, like a brother, and you're on my doorstep hurling insults at me. Go away. I don't want to see you again. I hate the look on your face, and you pretend to be sick, and you jump up and down the stairs like a stallion. Trevor turned and waved to his son-in-law. James, let's all go home. The ceremony was over. Lisa rushed after her grandfather. Grandpa, what are you doing? You're the one who asked for this meeting. The aggrieved old man turned around. And you're Lisa. You don't have to come to me anymore. You have a rich grandfather now. You even take care of him. And you've forgotten your way back to me. Trevor got into the car and slammed the car door loudly. His older brother stood in the same spot and desperately shouted, well, roll on. We haven't seen each other in 50 years, and we won't see each other again. Lisa, help me into the house. I don't feel well. The girl just burst into tears. You know I don't work for you anymore. The only thing I can do for you right now is call an ambulance. Lisa rushed past the old man into the house and grabbed her purse. She was crying. I wanted you two to make up so badly. How about you? Andrew stood there and blinked his eyes in surprise. No one has ever called me Gusak in my life. The car with the guests had long ago disappeared from view, and in the distance the figure of a girl who in just a few weeks could change the life of a lonely old man. Andrew still hoped that she would return, but the nurse did not appear. Only late in the evening he made his way into the house, and at the very entrance noticed his cane left by Lisa. The old man picked up the innocent object and brought it down forcefully on his knee. There was a crack that sounded very loud in the evening silence. The old man shouted, turning his eyes toward him. I've ruined everything, you old jackass. I myself have dreamed of making peace with my brother for so many years. Wendy, by the expression on her husband's daughter's face, realized that the meeting had failed. I knew it was a stupid idea from the start. My mother, when she was alive, told me in every detail about the conflict that had arisen because of her. I know my father too well to believe in a fairy tale reconciliation. Lisa drank her tea in silence, but after her mother's words, she said confidently, Mom, I've reconciled them anyway. I don't know how to do it yet, but I'll think of something. Wendy sighed. Oh, I don't know, daughter. For so many years, they've been basically complete strangers. And on the other hand, by the old age, everyone has a desire to be closer to their native roots, and they have such a thing for each other. I sometimes think, the bad character of my father and now Andrew, it's in their genes, Or maybe they're just afraid to be good. That's when James stepped in. You women love to find an explanation for everything. I mean, think about how they were when they were young. And all we know is what your father told Wendy. And no one listened to Andrew's side of the story. It's entirely possible that it's a different one. And it's only by putting one on top of the other that we can finally figure out who's right and who's wrong. Wendy looked at her husband thoughtfully. James, do you think after all these years it matters anymore? Did he wave his hand? Honestly, I'm not sure of anything myself. But I understand our daughter has your family's stubborn streak, and she won't give up. So we have to start somewhere. Lisa put the mug down. Mom, Dad's right. And you're right when you say that if you don't understand something, you should go to Dad. James looked at his wife gratefully and smiled. Daughter, can you count on me? If I can do anything, I will help you. Lisa decided to give Adrian and Grandpa a few days to pine away. First on her list was Andrew. She figured she'd have time to figure out what to say to him, how to get him to open up. Adriana met her at the doorstep. Lisa, what's wrong? What do you mean? Well, you're supposed to be at Andrew's. Lisa smiled. What did you call and complain already? No, but I'm just surprised to see you here. Adriana, I won't go to him anymore. You don't have to talk me into it. But Lisa the girl almost interrupted her. I'm sure he won't ask for a nurse again. If anything, Grandpa is quite still alive, and believe me, he runs faster than I do. Adriana exclaimed, what the hell happened? Oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. Lisa didn't have time to answer. How did Mom hear what happened again? Can you hear you in the next ward? I won't believe that Lisa's smart, kind girl upset you so much. Lisa turned around abruptly and froze. Rob was approaching them with a smile. Adriana quickly turned around and then threw herself at her son. How many times have I asked you to call me by my middle name at work? Rob smiled even wider. Excuse me, Adriana, may I ask what I've upset you about, Lisa? The woman looked at Lisa in surprise. Do you two know each other? Aren't you the beautiful Lisa I've heard so much about? Lisa blushed instantly and shrugged her shoulders. Adriana, the young people followed me. They entered some kind of office, and the nurse closed the door behind them. Rob, maybe Lisa will listen to you and go back to Andrew. Who's Andrew? It's a long explanation. One very elderly and very cranky patient. Rob turned to Lisa. Lisa, why are you hurting patients? Lisa laughed involuntarily. So funny was Rob's tone. She drew in more air. I can't go back to him because we had a fight, not as caregiver and patient, but as granddaughter and grandfather. The thing is, Andrew turns out my grandfather is really my great-uncle. Adriana shook his head. I don't understand. What granddaughter? Oh, it's such a long story. My grandfather and Andrew. They fought when they were young. Now they're both old people and they both miss each other. But they are so stubborn that even at the meeting we arranged for them, they manage to immediately fight, call each other names, and then part as enemies again. I think they should make up. They don't have much time in this world. And they, their bad temper is just a consequence of fighting. You should see them together like two sheep with their horns locked together and no place else to go. Rob chuckled. That's quite a story. How long have they been estranged? For over 50 years. Adriana waved her hand. Doesn't that remind you of anything? I'm sure there's a woman involved in their case, just like ours involves a man. Anyway, that's Lisa. I'm going to draw up a new schedule now. Let's hope your ward doesn't alert the whole city. And if he does, we'll be on the defensive. Lisa changed her clothes and went out. She had already seen Lola sitting at the reception desk with an important look and not reacting to the patients asking her anything. She was concentrating on the scenery outside the window. Lisa did not interfere with the work process because she herself had things to do, but they had to cross paths again. And in the most unexpected way, they ran into each other in the doorway when they went out after work. But the most interesting thing was not that. Max and Rob were waiting outside. Lola walked over to Max and glanced at Rob, but he just turned away and smiled at Lisa. "What are you up to? Let's go." He put his arm around her shoulders and dragged her away from the hospital porch. Lisa walked at first, then indignantly threw off his arm. "If you're showing off," passed from Max. There was so much surprise in Rob's gaze that Lisa immediately felt ashamed. "I'm sorry, Rob. What are you?" "I'm totally," he exhaled. "Okay, never mind. You know, I have an idea to reconcile your grandfathers. If you have time, let's go to the park. I'll tell you." Lisa looked at the time. Mom's gonna be worried. Lisa really didn't want to upset her or Dad right now. Recent events had somehow brought them very close together. She looked at Rob. "Look, why don't we go over there and we can talk?" Rob looked at her in surprise. "And how would you introduce me?" Lisa smiled. She wasn't at all sure she was doing the right thing. She didn't know how her mom would take it. But there was no other way. "I'll introduce you as a friend to a coworker." James paced from corner to corner. "I don't know. I think it's a completely crazy idea. And if it doesn't work out, do you realize that this will be the end of it?" Lisa nodded that in our case, the end would be a return to the way things were before. That is, they just won't remember each other at all. James raised his glasses to his forehead, looking at his daughter. "So I take it you're already on board." Dad hasn't yet. But Rob makes a good point. Such a strong quarrel by traditional methods, not calm down. You need some kind of emotional outburst. Wendy poured tea, Rob. "But darling, they're very old. What if the heart can't take it?" "Mom, we need to get someone to tell them I've been hit by a car. Someone who can watch me, give me a shot. But I think grandpas are a lot stronger than they realize." James sighed. "Well, let's give it a try, shall we? Rob, you tell me what you decide about the performance chamber." Rob waved his head contentedly. "Yeah, Mom will help. Wendy said we'd better not be enemies with the grandfathers. They'll find out it's not true. They won't forgive us." Lisa replied, "We won't say we lied. It's just a strong body. That's why she got better. Or were you sent home for treatment?" Rob raised his hand. "By the way, the second option is a win-win. Elderly people will have a chance to scold medicine and take care of Lisa together. We just need to get it all mapped out, calculated. I set up some kind of accident for Lisa. It's a deal." In 3 days, Lisa had to visit one and the other grandfather before, so to speak, to set up bridges. Trevor met his granddaughter with a guilty look. "Forgive us, old fools. But I guess we'll live out our lives one by one. But don't take offense. Come back often." Lisa hugged her grandfather, saying she'd never leave him. Trevor even wept. She was leaving. It's a bit of a nerve-wracking feeling. It doesn't make sense. It could be that Mom's right, and they're doing this for nothing. They're old people, after all. But after a little thought, she decided that she would not abandon the plan. They were all sure the grandfathers would make up. At her hospital bed, which Lisa finds herself in after a car accident that won't really happen. The next day, she has to visit Andrew. Lisa was working and thinking about what Lisa will be talking to him about. She was surprised to see Max walking towards her. "Max, Lisa, I want to invite you to a movie tonight." The girl looked at him in surprise. "But what about Lola? What about Lola? She's dumb as a cork." "I'm sorry, Max, but I can't." Lisa turned away, considering the question exhausted. And then she met the angry stare of Alla, who was standing outside the door. And of course, she heard everything. Max kept up. "Listen, you can't do it today. Let's do it tomorrow." Lisa turned to him. Max was smiling. "Max, answer me one question. Who are you trying to hurt right now, Lola or Rob?" Max's kind, naive eyes narrowed a moment ago. "Aren't you a little too smart for a regular nurse? A trainee. And I'll answer that I'm trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone." Max turned around and headed for the exit. And Lisa looked where Lola had just stood. She hoped that the girl had heard everything, but she was not there. Rob was sitting by Lisa's parents. "I don't understand what's taking so long. It'll be dark soon. How is she going to get home? James looked at Rob and smiled. He really liked the guy. Wendy Travers seemed to like him, too. Maybe I should call her after all. Wendy's got the phone. I'll call her. I'm a mom after all. It won't raise any suspicions. Wendy dialed the number. She listened for a long time. I don't get it. No answer. Rob said maybe the phone's in her purse and she's somewhere in the rooms. You know what? I'm gonna go to her place. She's probably forgotten it's time to put the plan in motion. James was getting worried. You're probably right. Call her right away. I will. Rob drove up to Andrew's house. It was strangely quiet and even the gate was closed. He parked, went to the gate, stood for a while, dialed Lisa, but the receiver was now switched off. Rob resolutely pressed the call button. The gate opened and an elderly woman stood behind it. Hello. Hello. Can I speak to Lisa? But Lisa hasn't come to see us for days. Rob felt a chill run down her spine. That can't be. She was on her way to your house around 5 o'clock today. The woman shrugged. If you don't believe me, ask Andrew. She headed toward the house, and Rob followed her. He really hoped the lady hadn't seen Lisa arrive, although that was very unlikely. Andrew was sitting at the table. Who else is there? He looked unhappily at the housekeeper, then at Rob. The young man spoke up. The thing is, Lisa was supposed to go to your place after work today. But I understand she didn't get to you. Her phone is off. What the hell is going on? The old man's eyebrows went up at me. But he's up at work, Rob tapped himself on the forehead. No, I'm going to call my mom now. He quickly pulled out his phone, talked over something, and turned confusedly to Andrew. Mom says she left on time and was in a big hurry. She said the old man went to Grandpa's house because she wasn't like those girls who just disappear without warning. That's for sure. Well, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to her parents. Andrew stood up, and I didn't argue with you. Rob wasn't going to argue, of course, though he wanted to say a few words to the old man. They're the reason something's going on with his brother. Wendy looked at Rob in surprise, then at Andrew. She looked out on the landing. Where's Lisa? Rob looked at her in silence and didn't know how to tell her. Wendy, don't worry. I'm sure there's an explanation for everything. For example, Lisa's phone just died and she had to go somewhere urgently. The woman slowly sat down on the couch. Lisa is very careful about everything. She can't have a dead phone. If it goes out somewhere, she always warns you. I take it she wasn't at your place today. Wendy looked at Andrew. No, she wasn't. I was going to go over there myself to apologize. The girl worked so hard, and we're two old fools. Wendy wrapped her arms around her head. She's gone. It's been over 5 hours. We have to go to the police. It's the first time James has raised his voice. At the police, no one will take a statement right away. We have to wait until 3 days have passed. Wendy exclaimed. James, 3 days? What are you saying? The man stood up resolutely. So Rob and I are going to the hospital now. Ask there if Lisa said anything or if anyone saw her come out. Andrew got up, and I had a fit. Will you, kind uncle, wait here? I don't want anything to happen to you. You're making a mess of things. Grown men. Could it be because of you, Lisa? Andrew sat down silently. Wendy's right. But peace, my brothers. Let me not give it to you. It was not enough to spoil it. At that moment the phone rang. Wendy wiped her tears and grabbed the phone. Oh my God. Speak of the devil. It's Dad. What are you doing up? There's so much time. Wendy, don't yell at your father. You don't want to talk to an old, useless man. Get my granddaughter. I'll talk to her. Wendy wanted to say something, but she couldn't. Wendy cried. Wendy, what's wrong? Talk fast. I wonder why I can't sleep. Wendy. Andrew took the phone from Wendy Trevor's hands. Hey, Trevor, what are you doing there? You're trying to take over my family. Shut up, Trevor, and listen. Lisa's gone. The phone went silent. Andrew impatiently said, "Are you deaf or what?" As disappeared, Trevor's voice sounded muffled. "So gone. While I was thinking how to make us up. While I was running to you. And she's gone. My son-in-law, where? Where and who knows where? They're looking for him. This guy Rob is with him. He's looking for him too. I'll be there soon. What are you coming in? You old fool. Or did you buy a car? That's not your concern. And don't forget you're older. That makes you even more of a fool." The phone buzzed briefly. Wendy looked at Andrew. "Well, he'll be here in a minute," she said. "Where's he coming? What's the old man driving?" Wendy shrugged. Trevor, meanwhile, was dialing the number of the cab. He found it in an ad in the paper. After talking to the girl and explaining everything about where he lived, he began to pack a bag. It is necessary to put all the necessary thermos, flashlight, clothes, find warmer. He put everything that he thought would be useful. Adriana, Rob and James, all of them realized that they would not learn anything new. They already wanted to go coming the route Lisa was supposed to take. As one ambulance driver remembered, "I don't know if this information will be helpful to you. A guy came in for the day. Second intern with him all the time. Anyway, he was kind of hitting on Lisa, and the second intern heard her hiding behind the door over there. She didn't see me. I was just going into the gallery to get some boiling water for tea." Rob immediately grabbed the phone. He called, then called again until he got an answer. Max, you bastard, where are you? Did you even know how? Why the hell are you calling me? You're yelling at me at a time like this." Rob tried not to yell, but he wasn't very good at it. "I'm not just gonna yell. I'm gonna interrupt you. Do you understand me? Where's Lisa? Or are you gonna answer me right away? Or I'm gonna find you right now." Max laughed. "Rob, have you been drinking in there? How should I know? Where's your Lisa?" "Max, I'm not in the mood for jokes. I don't understand. Are you serious? Did something happen?" Rob realized that his brother, no matter how bad he was, would never dare to do anything bad for which he would have to be held responsible. So I asked, "Max, when was the last time you saw her?" This afternoon. I tried to ask her out. I confess, you have. I thought about taking her off your hands. But she wouldn't even listen. I'm so sick of it. She's the dumbest person I've ever seen. So I tried to ask Lisa out. I never saw her again. I left right away. Hello, is she with you? Can I talk to her? I'm afraid I can't. She called about 4 o'clock. I told her it was over between us. She was screaming. Rob, where are you? Do you need any help? We can handle it. He disconnected, looked at James Isaac. We need to look for Lola, but we need to look the right way. We'll split up. I don't even know. Maybe we'll go through first. Okay, let's. They left the hospital and stopped on the street. There were 2 grandfathers waiting for them. Behind them stood Wendy. She looked questioningly at James, but he shook his head negatively. The woman immediately turned away to wipe away her tears. What are you doing here? Trevor glanced glumly at his son-in-law. Were you inspecting the road? No, we didn't have time. We'll go now. We had to go first. The grandfathers took the flashlights in their hands. Trevor handed his rucksack to Rob, and they moved away from the hospital. Or from behind the door banged tiredly on the door and sank tiredly to the floor. He was wet, floppy, cold. But the girl didn't care. She even suspected there were rats, but it wasn't scary anymore. It was only the first hour or 2 when she hurried to Andrew. Lola got in her way. Lisa, we need to talk. Lola, let's do it next time. What's wrong with you? Let's go behind the bushes. There's a bench behind the bushes, not just to talk. We need to talk. Lisa sighed. It was the first time she had seen Lola talking normally. If you're about Max, no, or because the conversation has nothing to do with him. Well, okay. Just for a little while. I'm in a big hurry. Sure enough, they wrapped up behind the bushes. Lisa saw no bench, only a dilapidated house. Apparently, It had already been vacated for demolition, and it looked terrifying. "Where's the bench?" A little further ahead. Lola followed behind on the narrow path. As soon as they appeared at the entrance to the cellar, Lola pushed her hard in the back, and Lisa literally rolled down. The girl shoved her until Lisa regained her senses into the basement room and closed the door. Lisa, when she heard Lola putting the lock on, screamed, "Lola, what are you doing? You're out of your mind. You're the one who's crazy. What the hell are you doing? Always getting in my way. Now sit there until you die. Lola, you're going to jail. Let me out. No one will ever find you." "Got it." Lisa started going through her pockets, but the bag and the phone must have stayed in front of the door. "Hello? Hello, open up. They'll find me anyway." Lisa heard some rustling. Then she listened again and realized that Lola was piling some branches or other debris in the entrance. The girl started pounding on the door in desperation. "Lola, I beg you," but there was silence outside. Lisa pounded on the door with her hands, then her feet. She screamed when her voice was gone. She pounded on the door again with her feet, realizing with horror that no one was walking past the structure. That's where the police came in. She chased some alkies to homeless people. If they heard her, it was unclear whether it would be better. It was pitch black in the basement. There was a tiny crack in one side of the door, and it glowed slightly. When the glow disappeared, Lisa realized that it was dark outside. She sat on the floor and occasionally knocked on the door with her removed shoe. "What's in here?" "Nothing. A wasteland." "What wasteland with his house in sight?" Trevor pointed the beam at the house. "It's not a house. No one lives there anymore." James shuddered. "No, she can't be there." Wendy cried. Trevor turned to her. "But what's the baby saying? And what's the baby saying?" Andrew supported his brother for the first time. "There's no need to cry. Not why. As long as nothing has happened, nothing will happen." Rob went forward, and the old men lit the way. Rob thought that's what the old guard was all about, and their flashlights and backpacks were obviously useful. They walked around the house. Rob said nothing, no sign of anything, and even the basement was filled with trash. Andrew approached the opening to the basement. He looked there for a long time, then called Trevor over. They talked about something and Trevor ordered them to dismantle. James answered, "I can take it apart, of course. But you can see that it's empty, and we will only waste time empty. You say, look how the grass is taken. So they've been carrying garbage here recently, and the grass hasn't grown yet. It takes 24 hours for the grass to come up, you know." Rob was already spreading out the trash. James joined him. Trevor raised his hand when half of it had been cleared, but silently everyone stopped. Faint thumps were heard from below. "Lisa." Rob started up with redoubled energy. Wendy looked down in horror. "The lock here is a healthy lock." Trevor told Andrew about the light. He pulled a knife out of his backpack, did some more picking, and the lock opened. Rob tore the door open, and Lisa fell at their feet, who, as soon as she heard the sounds, stood pressed against the door and whispered help. The voice was gone. It had been missing for hours. Wendy rushed downstairs. "Lisa, Lisa, you're all right." They didn't get home until the morning. "Daddy, Uncle Andrew, I'll style your room for you." Trevor looked at his daughter, then at Andrew. "My brother and I are going to go to his place, if that's okay with him. He seems to have more room. We'll talk about everything." Andrew nodded his head in agreement. "Yes." James stood up. "I'll take you." Wendy saw the men off and went to pack a bag. Lisa had been left at the hospital. "We had to take things, and then to the police." Lisa is squinting in the sun. She spent 24 hours in the hospital. They took some tests, gave her pills, and Lisa slept for 24 hours. Now her mom called, said they were waiting for her downstairs. The doctor gave her the certificate, told her to be careful. She went down the stairs and thought that, as it turned out, it was so great to live that it was impossible to tell. And if she could still get to try on her grandfather's. Lisa knew that Lola had been taken to the police and that sort of even Max had gone there. Probably realized it was all for him. But I didn't want to think about the ball. I didn't want to forgive or be angry. That's all. She was only a few steps away from the ball when Rob rushed up to meet her. Lisa blushed immediately. She remembered him stroking her cheek, her arm. When she'd been found, she hadn't cared then. Now she thought that everyone had seen it. She'd lost consciousness almost immediately. Like the doctor said, the shock of being found was worse than the shock of being hidden in the basement. "Lisa, how are you?" Did he put his arm around her? Or did you lock yourself away from her all right? "Thank you. You're welcome. It's the grandfathers. The grandfathers. Why does he talk about them? As if they were one and the same." Lisa followed his gaze and saw the grandfathers. They were standing off to the side, talking peacefully. Lisa even lost her eyes. No, they're really standing there, talking, even laughing. "Rob, did they make up?" "They totally made up. And it's all thanks to you." Lisa fell into the arms of Mom, then Dad, then Grandpa. She was smiling. She couldn't believe that these two old people were really talking, smiling, and no one wanted to kill anyone. Already at home at the set table. When Rob and Lisa talked about how they were going to set it up, as if the girl had been in an accident. Trevor looked at Andrew and stood up. Andrew stood up after him as well. "We apologize. We want to apologize to you, Lisa. If it wasn't for you, we'd be dead." Lisa hugged them and then signaled Rob to go out on the balcony. She looked so mysterious that Rob was immediately worried. Oh, this was not good. They went out on the balcony, looked down at the kids playing on the playground for a while. Then Lisa turned sharply to Rob. "You know, I've got a cool idea for reconciling Grandpa Andrew and his son." Rob realized that his fears were justified. Lisa's eyes were sparkling. She was ready to rush back into the fray. He grabbed her arm and literally dragged her into the room. "Just a moment, everyone. Our Lisa, who almost died yesterday, announces a new adventure. Andrew Saveleaf's reconciliation with his son. I think something should be done about it." Andrew stood up, smiled. "I called the kids yesterday. They'll be here by this evening." Lisa clapped his hands together, but Rob raised his hand again. "It's not all about watching Lisa. I realized she needed constant supervision. That's why everyone froze." He turned to the girl, who was looking at him with huge eyes. "That's why I'm asking for Lisa's hand in marriage. As a husband, it will be much more convenient for me to keep her away from all sorts of detective stories." Wendy cried at once. The old men murmured approvingly. They liked Rob right away. James put his arm around his wife. "Come on. There's no need to cry. Rob will take good care of our daughter." Rob looked at Lisa carefully. "What do you think?" Lisa snuggled up to him. "What can I say? The two of us can do so much more." Rob grabbed her and surrounded her. Everyone present laughed at the girl's words.